Are we ready, gang?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay, hopefully you've got a copy of a, does anybody not have a copy of a purchase contract in front of them? Looks like everybody does. Okay, good. All right, we're going to quickly review where we left off last week. And I mean literally quickly. Okay, so we've got our RPA and joint escrow instructions. We've got a date on it. We've got a name. We talked about the importance. This is a little different offer, so now we've got the Thorin Lemming and Nathaniel Lemming. We talked about the importance of knowing that your client's name, middle initial, are they juniors, are they seniors? Obviously the property address is important. It'd be nice if this particular offer had a parcel number on there. Not the end of the world, it's not going to contractually invalidate it if you don't have the APN when you write it, but it's not a bad idea to put it on there. This property is in the city of Riverside. It'd be nice if it said the county of Riverside on this pre-printed form, okay? So let's be professional, let's fill out every blank we possibly can. We've got our purchase price, let's fill something in here. We've got our purchase price, I think last month or last week we used $250,000, let's just stick with that. It auto-populates that. We talked about the importance of having an accurate date. We can arm wrestle over, we prefer 45-day escrow as opposed to, May 15th. So I'll just put in, May 15th. Keeping in mind, I've already checked my calendar, which I haven't, but let's just pretend for a minute that I've already checked my calendar, and I've determined that May 15th does not conflict with a holiday, with a weekend. It works with my lender. Brad has blessed a May 15th closing date. We can get the appraisal done on time, so everybody's happy. So again, I, personal preference, prefer a hard date. Again, many of you have sat through this class more than once, and I know many of you have said, Lance, I don't prefer a hard date. There is an argument for 45 days from acceptance, and it's a good argument. The only thing I would restate, if I didn't make it clear last time, is if you do put, check the box, this is blank, check the box, 45 days from acceptance. This is what I suggest you do immediately upon acceptance. You get everybody on the same page as to when is the start date and when do we start counting, so we all know that our date is now July 3rd or whatever it happens to be. So you know exactly, and by the way, I'm glad I said July, I just randomly popped up with July 3rd. This is another reason I don't, and I believe me, I didn't plan it this way, it's another reason I don't like 45 days from acceptance. Because let's again, today, 45 days from acceptance works fine. It's on a date and a time that seems to be acceptable, it's not conflicting with any holidays or anything like that. But now, does it sometimes take a week or 2 or 3 to get your offer fully accepted? It does. Well, now we get an offer accepted 3 weeks from now, and now we start counting up 45 days, and we just came up with a date. I don't know, we might have it wrong, but we just came up with a date of July 3rd. Does anybody see a problem with July 3rd?
Yes.
Could be a problem. So again, if you've done that, and you now have an acceptance date that then you start counting and it conflicts with a holiday, or maybe it's in between Christmas and New Year's or whatever, you just need to get everybody on the page immediately and nail down those dates.
When you put that date, just so I have an understanding of the system, 45 days, is it whatever the 45th day is, or is it, so if it's a Sunday, that's it?
It's 45 days from acceptance. Yeah, that's basically how it works. So whatever, if it falls on Christmas Day, if the 45th day is Christmas Day, contractually that's your close of escrow date. Let's change hats a little bit. Let's pretend we're the listing agent. Which, by the way, the vast majority of the offers that I see as a listing agent do not have a specific date. They have 30 days, whatever it happens to be. So let's suppose I'm the listing agent. It takes me however long it takes to finally get an offer accepted by the seller. If I'm doing my job as the listing agent, part of my acceptance is going to take this ambiguous date, and my counteroffer back of some sort will now include a hard date. Okay, we're countering this and this and this. Maybe we've got a couple counteroffers going back. We think we've got everything ironed out, but let's iron out, okay, now that we've gotten to this point, we've been fooling around for 2 weeks. 45 days looks like it's July 3rd. So you talk to the buyer's agent, say, hey, I want to draft a final paperwork here. What do you think? Do you think we can get this thing done in June before the holiday hits? Or do you think we might want to do it after the July 4th holiday? You think we might want to prepare for the 7th, 8th, and 9th, or whatever it happens to be? So have that discussion, get everybody in agreement, and then nail down that date. Okay, so again, we can go on for days about that. We've got our agency disclosure, mandatory. Did I say this is mandatory?
Yes.
You must have your buyer and or seller, whoever you're representing. In this case, we're the buyer's agent. We're writing the offer. Your buyer must acknowledge prior to receipt of the contract the disclosure regarding agency relationships, the all-inclusive agency form. Potentially competing buyers, we'd love them to sign the DA form. Says you could be financially dealing with more than one buyers. There's the listing or the confirmation form in here. Type in the name of the company that you work for as the listing agent, Coldwell Banker, Pioneer. Type in the name of the selling agent. This would be us. This would be the person that you work for. Coldwell Banker, Pioneer Real Estate. I prefer to say real estate. We are not Coldwell Banker RE. We are not Coldwell Banker Pioneer. We are not Coldwell Banker Pioneer Realty. We are Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate. At the end of the day, does that hurt anything by saying R.E. It's not going to invalidate the contract. Nobody's probably going to say boo about it. Even if you put Coldwell Banker Pioneer Realty, which is technically a company that doesn't exist, probably no one's going to say boo. Probably not even going to hear from me about it, even though I don't know why. I just have a problem with the word realty. I don't like companies that are named ABC Realty. I don't know why, but at any rate, so spell out the name of our company. What is our agency relationship? Buyer exclusively, seller exclusively, or are we representing both? If you are representing both, you do have to put it in both spots. Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate, representing both buyer and seller. Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate, representing both buyer and seller. Okay, we talked about our escrow holder. How are we going to handle our deposit? Okay, again, don't want to go into a lot of detail, but we've discussed 3% is not bad. Okay, we like a 3% of the purchase price is a nice amount for a deposit. We also discussed basically leaving the default in the contract. And the default in the contract is that the buyer will deliver to the escrow company directly the deposit within 3 days after acceptance. As opposed to the buyer has given, check the box, has given my agent, Robert, a check for $7,500. Okay? Two very different things. Both of them are proper. One requires more care and handling. Buyer has given you money. Trust funds in receipt, trust funds in the log, trust funds checked into the log, checked out of the log, documented all the way. So just make sure we know what we're doing. Again, if you rewind the tape from last week, I used to prefer item 3A2. I feel you have more control. I think that's a more professional way. You have a check in your hand, okay? Because I'm paranoid and I'm worried about my agents not handling it properly, it's safer for me as a broker if everyone just follows item 3A. And in effect, you can still have the discussion about how important it is for you to give me your earnest money deposit. The only difference is you're not going to give me an earnest money deposit when you write the offer. But we still need to have a discussion that says as soon as we get acceptance, or certainly no later than 3 business days after the property is accepted, you got to get that deposit in. And I'm going to help you do that. Keep in mind, I don't think we talked about this last time. Let's suppose you have not given me a deposit, but we've gone with item 3A. Now we do get the offer accepted, and I call you up and say, hey, you got to get the $7,500 in escrow. And you say, okay, great, I'll bring it by the office here in a few minutes. Is that fine? Well,
yeah.
You're shaking your head.
Yeah.
I understand why you're shaking your head, because you might want to say, no, I don't want it. I want you to get it straight over to Lawyer's Title / escrow company, or straight over to Summer at Town and Country Escrow, because that's what the contract says. But it doesn't necessarily say that the buyer has to deliver it personally to the escrow company. It says the buyer has to give it. So let's suppose you give it to me. What do I have to do with it now? I have to log it. I've now received it. And what did I do with it? Well, I had it for a minute, and I put it in an envelope, and I sent it over to ABC Escrow. Okay? Well, I still have to then, I had it, and then how long did you have it? I had it at 1 o'clock, And what'd you do with it? Well, at 102, I handed it to Summer. Okay, if you walk down the hall, you want 30 feet down the hall. Have to log, if you touch it, you have to log it in. Okay.
Question, some of the listings, they're asking for earning money deposit when you submit your RPA.
Correct.
So I have to get a check anyways, or I can have him take a picture of it and send me a picture of it? Is that good enough?
Yep, and best practice, if you're a listing agent, and frankly, for that matter, if you're a buyer's agent, best practice is to have the buyer give you a check for $7,500. Made payable to, we're going to get to this on page 2 of the contract, made payable to the escrow company that you have put in there, or made payable to Coldwell Banker, Pioneer Real Estate. Okay? Because a lot of the listing agents will say, hey, that's nice, I see your direct deposit, or I see your offer, it's really nice. Show me that you got a deposit check. Now you could say, well, reference page 1, paragraph 3A, as you can see, Mr. Listing Agent or Mrs. Listing Agent, I have not collected the deposit, and the buyer will put their deposit directly into escrow upon acceptance. You could say that. Some of those sellers, some of the banks will say, no, get a check, give us a copy of it.
Should we request wiring instructions for that?
You could, they could wire it in directly. You have to know what escrow company you're dealing with. You said you could, and if you do business regularly with Summer Town and Country Escrow or Sally with ABC Escrow, not a bad idea to have their wiring instructions, so you can have that. So, okay, again, my summary is a little longer than I thought it was. So we're dealing with our deposits, we're dealing with increased deposits, which we talked about. We talked about how we're going to handle loans, you can FHA, VA, conventional. We went, I think our example last week was a 20% conventional. So what we would have done in that case, we would have went to Brad and said, you know, what's a 20% conventional at 200? And he would have said, well, your loan amount, Lance, is going to be 200,000. Okay? Okay? Fair. Oops, we didn't put our deposit in here. Let's go up. We put our deposit in here. Initial deposit is 7,500. That's our 3%. Okay? One of those nice little things that it'll calculate it. So you got a $7,500 deposit. You got a $200,000 loan. The buyer needs to bring in a balance of $42,500 for a total purchase of $250,000, which should match the purchase price up top at $250,000. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, your congratulations, we got your offer accepted. As you can see, let's see if I can get this to fit all on the same screen. A little tough for those of you viewing at home. Shrink this just a little bit.
75, or custom.
Okay, well, this is going to be a little tough to see for just a moment. Maybe it's impossible to see for the moment. Okay, as you can see, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we've asked you for $7,500 as an initial deposit. We've asked you to bring an additional $42,500 as the balance of purchase price or down payment. You need to read these contracts literally, okay? So, easy math says you got a $250,000 sales price. We're asking you to bring in $50,000. So guess what? All you need to buy this house is, work with me, give me the wrong answer. All you need to buy this house, the wrong answer is $50,000. Right? Has anybody ever closed a deal or heard of a deal where you get down to close of escrow, the buyer has given you a check for $7,500, which is in escrow, you're now 45 days later, you get loan approval, you get everything ready to go, we're going to close on Friday, and say, be prepared, because escrow is going to call you, and they're going to tell you to come on in, and we're going to sign some final paperwork, and you're going to bring in the funds you need to close. So your buyer's sitting at home, they're all excited, okay, we've got our $42,500, everything's fine, okay? And then they get to escrow, and then you get the phone call that says, your buyer's a little confused. They don't understand that we need, because by the way, approximately how much more money might they need? Let's just, for argument's sake, let's say they need about 50 grand. So escrow says, in order to get this closed, you need to bring us in about 50,000. And the buyer's like, oh, it's okay, honey, we already gave him the 7,500. You know, so we're just going to roll in there with the 42. Now, whose fault is that? That the buyer does not understand that this number here, balance of purchase price or down payment. Down payment. Down payment is for the down payment. The closing costs are different. Does it say balance of purchase price including closing costs on this line? It does not. Okay? So, I cannot, the answer is dozens. I have had dozens of escrows either delayed or fall out because the date
You have 3 hours, you get.
we will be done in an hour and 45 minutes. Thank you, Brian. But I've had dozens of escrows fall out because 3 days prior to close of escrow, the buyer somehow, and again, in fairness to the lenders and in fairness to some of the buyer's agents, sometimes the buyers just needed more help than we were ever able to provide. Okay? But I would say in 95% of the cases, the buyer coming in with that challenge 3 days before close of escrow is your fault. Even if it's Brad's fault, it's not Brad's fault, because as much as I've said we've turned to the lender for what the closing costs are going to be and what this is going to be and all the rest of that sort of stuff, we still have a responsibility to make sure that communication is in play. And we have this little thing over here called, good faith. You understand, Mr. and Mrs. Wright, it says right here, and you signed it. You understand? And again, when you're writing these offers for these buyers, you need to explain that to them. Say, I don't exactly know what your closing costs are going to be. Brad's going to help you with that, and you're going to meet with him in a couple hours as soon as we're done with this. Or maybe you've already met with him. So he may have already told you that your down payment's $50,000, but you've got escrow, you've got title, you've got loan fees, you've got discount points, you've got origination fees, you've got special fees, whatever that is. And you're going to give you a number. He's going to say, you understand that down payment and closing costs is $58,000 or whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
And not to take any of you, just staying with the mode here, if this customer, by the time they get to escrow, don't know, and you should have ownership, you're probably need another lender.
Yeah.
Because they have to be, they will have been notified no less than 4 times before they ever get loan docs.
Has anybody in this room ever had this problem? Okay.
So
I'm telling you, you will have this problem. Hopefully,
but not
hopefully you'll never. The problem that when you have this problem, hopefully when you have it, you will have the problem as the listing agent. So you will then be able to turn to the buyer's agent and the lender that you allowed them to use because you didn't ask them to get cross-called or whatever it happens to be. Now you're still going to have to look at the mirror, because by the way, now you have to turn to your seller and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have a problem. As you go over to their house and they're stacked with boxes and they're ready to go. And you get to, these are so fun. These conversations are so much fun to explain to your seller that the reason you're not going to close is because the buyer, who you were told has a fully approved loan, which does have a fully approved loan. And you might ask the question, how did they get a fully approved loan? They should have had verifications of all this, and they had verification that money is in the bank. Well, they did have money in the bank, and then they spent it. The buyer went out and they bought furniture for the house that they don't own yet. But at any rate, as a listing agent, it's not fun to have to sit back and tell your seller that you can't close escrow because the buyer didn't realize that they had closing costs on top of the down payment. By the way, who does the seller hold responsible for that? Who does the seller hold responsible for that? Listing agent.
Yeah.
How did you let that happen, Robert? Michael? How did you let us get this far down the path? You told me that the buyer was approved. You told me that the buyer was signing loan documents. You told me we're going to close escrow tomorrow, and now you're telling me we can't. It's tough. It's a tough deal. Okay, so we've got our balance. Oh, by the way, we've got this little line in here. And by the way, this is by design. I don't know if you guys have noticed in the purchase contract, there's not a lot of room to write stuff. Okay? You don't have a lot of room to write paragraphs and paragraphs of additional terms and conditions. If the CAR attorneys were standing here, they would smile and say, that's correct. Because we don't want agents writing paragraphs and paragraphs of contract. Okay? So now if you do need to write paragraphs and paragraphs, then we attach an addendum to this, and then we pretend that we're attorneys. Don't we like pretending that we're attorneys? We get to write nice language. I'm going to create a counteroffer. I'm going to make this the most complicated thing I possibly can. And I'm going to use a bunch of big words, and there too, and whereas, and if so, and blah, blah, blah. And then you read it and say, wow, who wrote this? A realtor pretending to be an attorney. Okay? So, well, let's put in some additional stuff. What possibly additional financing terms could we have in here? How about seller agrees to pay 2 discount points towards buyer's loan. You heard of that before? Okay. What happens, oh, which by the way, Brad's doing the loan, and you have failed to tell Brad. Actually, let's rephrase this. Brad tells you guys, this is the deal. If you can get this loan done, if you can get a little bit of help for the buyers on closing costs, it'll make things easier, smoother, and the market will demand that. Which, by the way, today the market's challenging. Buyers asking for closing costs is not an acceptable thing today. But let's suppose you did, and let's suppose Brad says, if you could get if you can get the seller to contribute with about $7,500 in of the buyer's cost, because whatever program he's trying to get, let's pretend for a moment that the program will allow the seller to pay 3%. Let's just pretend that's the fact. I don't know if that's the fact, but let's pretend. So Brad tells you $7,500, and maybe he even says somewhere in there about 3%, or the maximum we can get the seller to contribute is about 3%. So you go ahead and you write in here, seller to pay 3% towards loan discount points, or towards lender fees, or towards whatever. Okay? And I, as a listing agent, which I would not do, but let's just pretend I get that accepted. And let's pretend the language says, seller agrees to pay 3% of purchase price towards buyer's lender fees. Got it? Now, and what are we all thinking here? The seller is now contributing $7,500 towards the buyer's cost. Stop me right there. So now we get ready to close escrow, and escrow gets a HUD and everything in from the lender with all their workup sheet and all the rest of that. And escrow says, okay, well, let's see what the loan fees are. And she adds them up, and it's $4,200. Okay? $4,200 of loan fees. We have $7,500 over here. The buyer is thinking that they're getting how much? $7,500. Maybe even Brad is thinking that they're getting $7,500, because he said the seller can pay up to $7,500, and you told Brad, hey, the seller agreed to pay $7,500 of the buyer's closing costs. Okay, so Brad, $7,500. Buyer's thinking $7,500. Buyer's agent's thinking $7,500, and then you run into me, a listing agent who reads. Now escrow calls and says, the loan fees, as addressed in additional terms D, say seller will pay up to $7,500 worth of lender fees. Brad's lender fees are $4,500. Well, guess what? Guess how much is the seller going to pay towards lender fees? 75 or 45?
45.
What happens to the other $3,000?
Back to the seller.
They don't have to pay.
They're not paying.
Now what does the buyer say? The buyer says, wait a minute.
I want my money.
What about my escrow fee? What about my title fee? What about these other fees?
Lender fees only.
What about some other stuff? I thought I was gonna, and then Brad says, whoa, 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 wait a minute, they need all that $7,500. Because Brad had things calculated that the seller was gonna pay escrow and title, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Now, just because of the way we worded it, and the reality is, the seller, the buyer, the lender, everybody in the transaction, including the seller, and the listing agent for that matter, understood that the seller was committing to pay $7,500. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was not worded properly. Now, if Brad had said lender fees are $7,600 or $7,500, no problem. Seller pays the fees, no big deal. So, point I'm trying to make in a long, convoluted way is be very careful how you word the languaging, or how you string your words together, better than I am hopefully, in relation to what the seller is willing to pay. If you want, and the lender clears it, by the way, it's very important too. You just write in here, seller agree. Now you write it properly. This is the way I think it's proper. Seller agrees to pay up to $20,000 of buyer's closing costs, including but not limited to all of the fees that come from Coldwell Banker, all of the fees that come from escrow, all of the fees that come from title, anything under the sun that you could possibly put in here, and you put in a ridiculous amount, by the way, and I picked a ridiculous amount on purpose, $20,000, okay? By the way, you didn't tell Brad this. You're so proud of yourself. You now got the seller to pay some stupid amount in fees, okay? And now and the seller agrees to it. And the buyer's happy, everybody's happy. And then Brad at some point gets a hold of this and says, well, what are you going to do with all that? What do you mean what are we going to do with that? Because $20,000. I said, well, you can't. The loan program's not going to permit that. Seller can't pay 10 discount points or 10% of the sales price towards cost. You can't do that. My loan doesn't allow that. They can't do that. So now what do you? Well, now we got a problem. Well, we'll just use that for repairs. Well, no, you won't. Well, we'll just get that money outside of escrow. No, you won't. Okay? You got to have some dialogue with your lender here. What's permissible and what's permissible on deal A may not be permissible on deal D that you just did with Brad on all 4 deals. Well, the last one you said I can have up to 3% of the closing costs. What's special about this one? Different loan program. It's not permissible to get 5% up a sales price and closing costs to the buyer. So you need to have this dialogue, but whatever you ask for, be very clear, very concise, and either be limiting for a purpose or do not limit what you're asking for on purpose. Don't just do it by accident, okay? Let's take repairs, for example. Seller agrees to credit buyer up to $5,000 for the purposes of rehabbing the property. Is that a discussion that you might want to have with your lender? Is that always, oh sure, no problem, we can do that every deal? No. No. Seller agrees to include the 1957 Volkswagen Beetle in the garage as part of whatever. Or buyer agrees to contribute, $10,000 in uncut diamonds as part of the... What? Talk to your guy. He's going to tell you, you can't do that. You can't do that. What are you doing? Now, let me get back to repairs real quick, and we're going to talk about this in another place. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, we negotiate price. Negotiating price does not include negotiating for a new dishwasher, negotiating for a new stove, even negotiating for, let's suppose it's a new roof. This property cannot be done on an FHA loan with the roof in that condition. The roof has to be done. Now in that particular case, you may say, well geez, Lance, we really don't have a choice. We have to negotiate for a new roof. Seller agrees to re-roof entire subject property prior to close of escrow. Now you may put a cost limit in there or not. What happens if you negotiate? Seller agrees to replace, and you're doing this because it's an FHA deal and you just know it. I mean, it's just a mess. You know the appraiser's going to call it out. There's no way. At a minimum, they're going to call it for a roof cert, but you can just tell. I mean, there's no way this roof cannot be certed. It's a mess. Which, by the way, we can make that assessment because we're contractors, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's tongue-in-cheek. We cannot make that assessment. We cannot go in, we can give our best judgment, but we cannot emphatically go in and say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, my years of real estate experience, they've given me an honorary contractor's degree. And therefore, I am making the following factual statement that says, you will be required to put up a new roof. Okay, now again, we can't do that. But let's just suppose for argument's sake we need a roof. So we put in here, now maybe this isn't the best place to put it. There's another place we can put additional terms, because this is talking about financing terms. But people put all sorts of things in here that have nothing to do with financing. Doesn't make it contractually wrong. Not probably the best practice, but since we're on this line, let's just suppose we put in $7,500. Excuse me, let's just suppose we put in the seller agrees to put in a new roof. Because we've had a conversation with Brad. We've talked to him. We said, Brad, we're really concerned about the roof. Is it going to be a problem with the type of loan that we're doing for this buyer? And Brad's going to say, no. For this particular type of loan, we don't care what the condition the roof is in. If that's the case, then you negotiate price. Don't negotiate for a new roof. Now, in many cases, Brad may say, yeah, the roof has to be sound. Let's just take FHA for example. He's going to say you're going to need to have a roof that's not leaky. So we know it has to, so we put in a thing, seller agrees to replace roof. Is the buyer going to be happy with the roof that the seller
puts on.
They're not. What kind of roof is the seller gonna put on?
The cheapest.
Right. And even if it's sound, and even if it's, well, by the way, will the cheapest roof installed by a roofing licensed contractor with a 15-year warranty, will that satisfy Brad? And the one, yeah.
Yeah.
Will that satisfy the buyer? No. The buyer's going to get out, he's going to look at it. Who in the heck are you, what? Oh, and by the way, the roof, when I came to look at the property last week, that roof kind of had a reddish hue to it. And we really liked that. That really set off the trim and the oleanders on the side, and we loved that reddish hue. It's gray. Guys, I'm not making this stuff up. I've had that happen. We replaced a reddish hue, and I use the word hue because that's the word they kept telling me. It had a reddish hue to it. Now it's gray. We had to repaint the whole house, and it doesn't go with the brick fence. The brick fence and the reddish hue were. Are you kidding me? So, moral of the story is, under all circumstances possible, we do not negotiate repairs. We negotiate price. And if the buyer is hung up with condition of the landscaping and the pool equipment and the creepy crawler and the trees need to be trimmed and the wood on the side of the house needs to be removed and the garage door's got a little cute, you know, as long as it's not a problem for the lender / appraiser, we negotiate price. Well, you may say, but my buyer doesn't have enough money to fix these things after close of escrow. Well, it might take them a couple months or a couple years. If you go down the slippery slope of negotiating repairs into your offer, I am just telling you, you're asking for trouble. And I don't care how minor it is. I think we talked last week, seller to replace stove.
Dishwasher.
Dishwasher. If you are going to do that, you specifically need to ask your buyer, what do you want? Give me a model. Give me a make. Tell me exactly what you want. Where did you get it? What store did you pick it up from? And I know it may sound a little silly, but I want you to go into the contract and I want you to write, seller to replace the stove with model number 1234, that's stainless steel, and it can be purchased at Home Depot for a cost of, you're still asking for trouble, but be careful with that. Yeah.
Something I want to add that you may or may not be aware of. Do you know that when you order an appraisal, he gets a copy of the executed purchase contract?
Yes.
So if you didn't realize it, you just told him on the
Yep.
repairs
Yep.
to look for them.
And guess that appraiser now may be calling things out that he or she may otherwise not have called out. Right?
Flat.
Right? Absolutely. Guys, negotiate price. Don't make your life more complicated than it should be. This, I was just going to blow right by this, but let's just also deal with this. Who wrote this offer? Lance Martin, Global Bank of Pioneer Real Estate. There's my name, there's my fax. And there's my, where's my email? I thought I had email on there, no?
You guys it's on the last page.
Okay. Don't borrow anybody else's paperwork. If you're writing the offer, the bottom of this form needs to have your name on it. Okay?
We won't accept it either.
You're creating nothing but heartburn. Probably about at least 5 out of 100 offers, 5%-ish. We get an offer and we think we're, you know, Lance Martin's the broker, and we call, can I talk to Lance? You just wrote an offer on Main Street or Yearling Way. No, I didn't. Are you the broker? Yeah, I'm the broker. Oh, let me go. Oh, I see on page 8, I see John Smith. Who's John Smith? Oh yeah, John Smith just worked for me. He doesn't have his, you know, hasn't joined the board yet. Come on, guys. Get your stuff. Let's be professionals. Okay. All right. Page 2. We made it. We made it to page 2. We will move a little quicker. All right. Verification of down payment and closing costs. I'm going to deal with the defaults, and then we can talk about how we get out of the default. The on the contract is very simple. By the way, this is your basically your VOD. If you hear terms from lenders, if Brad says, hey, we need a VOD, verification of deposit. He's not really talking about deposit as far as earnest money. That's another thing that can be very confusing, especially for new people in the business. Sometimes when we say, up here, when we talk about,
500%.
Up here, on page 1, oh yeah, what's going on?
For 100%.
Okay, on page 1, we start talking about deposits. We're talking about earnest money deposits, EMDs. We love acronyms. Everybody loves acronyms. Hey, we got the EMD. Oh, you don't know what the hell's an EMD. Earnest money deposit. Oh, by the way, again, this form used to be called the deposit what? Receipt.
Receipts.
And it was a receipt, like a receipt that you get when you give somebody a check for money. It would be a receipt for the $7,500 deposit. Okay, now we're going to use the word deposit in a different form, or actually we're going to go back to the deposit. I apologize, it doesn't say anything about deposit here. It talks about verification of down payment and closing costs. Lenders normally refer to this as a VOD. This is a verification of deposit, and what that means is the lender, Brad, has said, we need you to authorize us to send a document to your bank, and your bank, Bank of America, let's say, needs to verify funds on deposit in your account. And in this particular case, it sounds like we need 50 grand. It sounds like we need maybe, let's just say, 8 grand for closing costs. And then there may be some reserves on there. So when Brad did his pre-qual for your buyer, Brad may have a number, and he's calculated it. He says, okay, these people need to have, let's just for argument's sake, let's just say they need to have $62,000 on deposit. If they don't have that amount of money, Brad needs to find out why, where, are we allowed to have gift funds on this particular loan, or where's the money coming from, or is it in a different account? Is it liquid? Is it available? And maybe we have 3 different accounts to verify. So for contracting purposes, what this says is the buyer is agreeing within 7 days to provide some type of proof that the buyer has the funds necessary to close. Now again, maybe a little different than what Brad's looking for, because Brad's looking for something more formal. He wants literally something that comes directly from the financial institution. Now from the listing agent's perspective, normally what would suffice to satisfy this? What would we want to get from the buyer's agent? Just a bank statement. Just give us a bank statement. Now we don't look on the bank statement necessarily, although we should. We don't normally get 3 months worth of bank statements. We get the one bank statement that says there's $100,000 in the bank. But maybe on that bank statement, we look on there and says, well, the account actually was just opened a week ago and it had nothing in it, and then there was a $100,000 bank statement, and it was on the bank statement you look at the thing and it says deposit cash, $100,000 bucks. Now it's possible Brad might have a problem with that, or he might at least have a question. Well, where'd the $100,000 come from? And it says on your bank statement that you deposited cash. Who does that?
Drug dealers?
Okay.
Terrorists?
Okay. All right. Do drug dealers and terrorists buy houses?
Yep.
Well, they may need to buy the whole house for cash, because Brad might have a problem documenting where that money came from, which could be a problem. But for our purposes, what this is saying is the buyer will give us some document, normally a bank statement, that says they have enough money to close the deal. And for our purposes, we normally want to make sure that's on this deal, 60 grand will probably be nice. If they give you a bank statement that says they got 11,000 bucks, you might want to put a red flag up. And by the way, if they do give you a bank statement that says 11,000 bucks, they are in breach. Let's suppose they give you nothing. It's now day 8. And you, again, contract, verification, buyer, or buyer's lender or loan broker, pursuant to 3H1, shall. That's not says, that doesn't say may. Shall basically means you will. Okay? Shall, within 7 days after acceptance, deliver to seller written verification of buyer's down payment, closing costs. And if checked, or if checked a verification. Another way, what this says is, if I check this box, you already got it.
Yeah,
There it is. I'm giving, which by the way, is that best practice? Best practice is to give the seller and their agent, along with the offer, here's my bank statement. But let's suppose you didn't do that. Let's suppose you have written, and by the way, you can apply this to probably 24 other items in the contract. Let's just strike this one. I am your buyer. You have represented me for 6 months. We have written dozens of offers. None of them have been accepted. We finally get one accepted. Finally. get one accepted. We are excited, and I am gold plated, okay? You asked me for a copy. Say, hey Lance, I know we wrote the offer yesterday, and I forgot to get your bank statement. Matter of fact, you had it. You were going to give it to me in the excitement of writing the offer. It must have ended up back in your briefcase. Get me over the bank statement because I have to get it to the seller and the listing agent within 7 days to comply with their contract. So I give it to you on day one. You check out, mentally or otherwise, and you do not deliver the statement to the listing agent. It's now day 8. Now again, there's a lot of things that potentially have to happen before this happens, but it's now day 8, and the listing agent and the seller are sitting back. I'm the listing agent now, and Brad's my seller. We're like, oh man, I hate to tell you this, man. Since we just accepted this guy's offer over here, I got 6 other offers. And 5 of the 6 are cash, and they're $20,000 higher than this guy. And boy, the market's just on fire. And Brad's like, well, let's just get out of this deal, man. I want to take one of these. And we advise him, oh, Brad, come on. We have a contract. You are bound to sell this property over here. Got a whole bunch of deals in here. And then Brad starts reading through the contract. And Brad says, well, I think there's a whole bunch of little things in here that the buyer needs to do. And if he doesn't do them, he's in breach of contract. And then he asks the $64,000 question is, well, if he doesn't do these things within the contract specifications, can we cancel so that I can there go accept this other offer that I like better? What's the answer to that question? Yes. Now you can apply that to a dozen things here. Let's just apply it to this one. I'm the buyer. I've given you the verification. You have not given it to the listing agent because you have checked out, and you define what that means. It's now day 8. Now I put my listing agent hat back on, Brad and Brad's calling me. It's day 8, brother. Do you have it? No, I don't. Send an over notice of cancellation. Now, we can talk about whether we need to send a notice to perform in advance. Let's put that aside for a minute. In my opinion, Brad is within his rights to cancel this deal. And the agent representing the buyer, is the buyer going to be pissed?
Yes.
Because not only the buyer actually has performed. You have a fiduciary relationship to your buyer to make sure we perform. But if the buyer chooses an idiot, well, the buyer is responsible for choosing an idiot to represent them. That's not an excuse. The buyer can't go into court and says, my agent had it. The judge is going to say, well, I understand you relied upon your agent to deliver that document so that you would be in compliance with paragraph 4G, whatever it is. And we understand that, Mr. Martin, that you relied. However, your agent failed. So when this is all said and done, you might want to consider legal action and damages against your agent. So, keep that story in mind. You can apply it to almost anything on this contract. And believe me, in this market, are sellers looking for reasons to cancel offers that they just accepted literally the day before? They are absolutely looking for reasons to cancel. And you certainly don't want that reason to cancel. It's one thing to lose a deal because your buyer didn't perform and they couldn't get it done. It's quite another thing to lose a deal because your buyer did perform and then you failed to execute. Okay, so we got to get verification of the buyer's ability to have the money to close the deal, which again is different than the requirement that Brad's going to put on you guys. Brad will have a buyer. I'm assuming we still have to do this via mail. Okay, send it, that's electronic or phone verification.
We have 2 current bank statements with sufficient funds, showing 60 days ceasing prior to the application, and no unusual deposits or transactions.
$100,000 cash, is that unusual?
It's illegal.
Okay.
First of all, it should have been reported to the IRS, but ever since the Patriot Act,
What
it's not
happened is the
acceptable.
client, actually I have cash buyers.
Yep.
There's a couple of them, they put money in the safe. And when the time comes, okay, now I
Problem.
wanted
The
to.
cash is okay, they have to report it somewhere else on an IRS statement, but since there's no financing, but the Patriot Act requires that any transaction actually is over $9,999.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get a silly example, but these happen, okay? You need so much money in the account. The buyer, drug dealer, realizes that needs to be verified. So Brad gets a copy of a bank statement. He used the word seasoned. I don't know if you caught that, but seasoned basically means a seasoned bank statement is a bank statement that makes some sense. There's a dollar amount in it a year ago. That dollar amount over the 12-month, in this case 2 or 3 months, it can do this. Okay, but when it does this or it does this, then the seasoning, you know, it's a little spicy. Okay, that requires an explanation. Why did all of a sudden your bank balance drop so significantly, or why did your bank balance increase so significantly? Even if it wasn't a big, huge cash. What if there was 10 $7,500 deposits over a period of, you know, a month? Now, again, Brad may define seasoning a little differently, and we'll let him respond here in a second. But if there's not a history of $7,500 deposits over months and months and months that makes sense, then you've got a problem. He says, well, wait, what happened? He says, well, I get a dividend of $7,500 and it's put into my account every 2 weeks. Okay, well, let's get some documentation that shows that. Because if you don't show a hit, well, how long have you been doing? Oh, yeah, well, I've been getting that since I've been a child. It's whatever. You're like, well, okay, well, let's see your bank statements for this bank for the last 6 months or 12 months, and you need to prove to us that you get regular deposits of that amount. If you can't, the flag's going to go up the pole, and they're going to say, what are you doing? You're laundering money? Is it drug money? What the hell's going on? Or are you preparing for this? Okay, which is a whole nother story. Is, you know, if you do have a buyer who doesn't have any money and is trying to season their bank statements, then wherever they're going to get their money, they need to get it, they need to put it in the bank, and they need to let it sit in there for
6 months at least.
a while. Okay, it's got to get in there.
2 months.
A couple months.
2 months.
Okay, and then you might not have a lender that says where did it come from, even if it did come from mom or dad or wherever it happened to come from. Let's leave the drug dealers out for a minute. Drug dealers are citizens as well. Okay. All right. So we've got our verification of down payment, closing costs. We got that covered. Additional loan terms, very important. Now, first of all, again, we've written the offer. We've got it written. It's signed. We on page 2, paragraph H1, loan applications. The default says that within 7 days from acceptance, the buyer will sit down and file a loan application. I would suggest that if your buyer has not already filled out a loan application, prior to writing the offer, the next time you're working with the buyer, you want to make every effort humanly possible to have them sit down with your qualified mortgage professional. Not just do a telephone pre-approval over the phone. That's step one. But if they're a serious buyer, Brad's going to sit down and say, okay, you qualify, this looks good. I know you're out there looking at the house. Let's take it to the next level. Let's sit down. How long does it take to fill a loan out?
You can do it online in 8 minutes.
8 minutes online. By the way, online's great. If you can get your buyer to come in and sit down face to face with your lender and take, now granted, that could take an 8-minute online application to 1 hour or 2, okay? And again, get it. But again, it's not a bad thing, because frankly, if they're sitting down with Brad and they're filling things, they're going to have questions, they're going to get answers, they're going to get explanations. And then if there are some red flags, or if you've got a buyer that's a little nervous and they think, geez, we might not want to talk about the fact that I just lost my job, but I got rehired. Okay, we don't want that's not the type of stuff you want to keep a secret. And, you know, because it may not be a problem. It may be a problem, but it may not be a problem. I lost my job as the manager of Pet Boys, but the next day I got hired as the manager of AutoZone. Maybe that's okay, maybe. Okay, I'm in the same industry, the same thing. Or I lost my job as the manager of Pet Boys, and now I got a job as a clerk at McDonald's. Well, that's probably a little different. Okay?
Big difference.
Could be a little different. All right, so at any rate. So we want to get the applications in early. And normally this is going to come in, and again, within 7 days from acceptance, buyers shall deliver a letter from the lender that says, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, it doesn't necessarily say they're approved. They have completed the loan application process. Oh, and by the way, the credit report.
Pre-qualified, pre-approved.
Well, yeah, but again, that doesn't mean, that's not final formal loan approval. It says they passed the sniff test,
Yeah.
subject to appraisal, you know, verification of employment, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so they're doing that. Loan contingency. Okay, buyers shall act diligently and in good faith to obtain designated loans. Now, a buyer acting in good faith means a couple things. Number one, they have to choose a quality lender. And they also, after they've chosen the quality lender, they have to perform in the delivery of requested documentation. Okay? I don't care how good your lender is, or frankly how good your buyer is, if your buyer is unwilling to provide the necessary documentation or explanation of the documentation, the lender is going to sit back and say, I can't help you, I've been asking for this stuff for 3 weeks. And now you're pressing me to close in 3 days. I can't do it because Mr. Buyer over here is dragging their feet. It happens all the time. So the loan contingency, again, let's get back to this. Buyer shall act diligently and in good faith. Then when obtaining the loans. Obtaining the loan specified above is a contingency of this agreement. So in other words, the loan is denied, the agreement is nullified, buyer's earnest money deposit is returned, no harm, no foul. Okay? Buyer's contractual obligations to obtain and provide deposit, balance of down payment, and closing costs are not contingencies of the agreement. So in other words, kind of what we talked about just a minute ago. Brad finally has a fully approved buyer, loan doc's ready to go. At some point, down payment verification was all in, but at some point prior to close of escrow, the required money seems to have disappeared. We now don't have enough money. Well, if the buyer turns up and says, oh, well, I know my loan's approved, but, you know, I don't have, I'm a little short.
Just bought a new TV.
Well, you just reminded me of something else. It is important, and Brad will remind you of your buyers of this as well, but you need to have this conversation as well.
Not to buy anything.
Don't buy anything. We're buying a house. We're going to close escrow in 30 days. Do not go out and buy the new car. Do not finance anything.
No new credit card.
Don't even get a new credit card. I know you're, we were in Macy's and they said we'd save $3 if we filled out an application for a new credit card. No, it may have no effect on what Brad's doing, but it could have an effect. Okay? Got an inquiry. The credit was just right there where it needed to be in the inquiry, knocked it down 2 points. Bam! But you sure as heck don't want them out buying cars or co-signing for their nephew or anything like that. Even the quality buyers, let them buy that crap after escrow closes. Okay? So, but it's not contingent, their funds are not contingent. Loan contingency. 3 and 4 are very important. Now keep in mind, right now we are representing who? We're writing the offer, we're representing the buyer. We want to look after the buyer's best interest, so you need to be careful with this. Loan contingency, within 17 days of acceptance, that is the default. Buyer shall, as specified in paragraph 14, we haven't got to paragraph 14 yet, in writing remove loan contingency or cancel the agreement. So in other words, if you leave the default in the contract as it's currently written, you better make sure your lender can have this loan approved in 17 days. Because they will no longer be able to cancel the contract without penalty because the loan is not approved. If you don't think your lender can get it done in 17 days, you need to modify this. You either need to check the box and put a days in here, and you need to talk to your lender. How long is it going to take? And normally they give you some wishy-washy BS answer. Well, it could take a couple weeks, or I've closed them in a couple of days. The reality is they really don't know, because who does it really depend on how long it's going to take? There's more than one party involved. It's not just him. Well, it depends on how cooperative your buyer is. So, well, if the buyer gives me everything I need, and if processing underwriting isn't overwhelmed, we should be able to get it done within a certain period of time. I got to tell you, most lenders, if you ask them, can you get us a full formal loan approval within 17 days? Well, the honest ones are going to say, well, geez, I should be able to, but there's a lot of contingencies there.
I is most important.
What?
I.
Well, and we're not only are we going to get to I, we're also going to talk about
I put the check mark on the
this one?
Yeah.
And that's where we're headed on this. But let's get to that in a minute, and then we'll talk about what your suggestion is, which is important. So the loan contingency removal, basically, you got to be careful. Best practice for buyers, agents representing buyers, is to check the box. The loan contingency shall remain in effect until the designated loan's funds. Okay, that does a couple of things. Number one, it takes the buyer off the immediate hook, takes the lender off the immediate hook. So if it takes 30 days to get the loan funded, well, then the contingency's in place for 30 days. Okay? Now, as a listing agent,
I don't like it.
I don't like it. And what hat am I wearing? Not only do I not like it, I would prefer that we just have no loan contingency. Show me how confident you are. Now again, let's markets place different. Let's take a look at today's marketplace. If you have a really confident lender and a really confident buyer, and you've been writing offers subject to financing contingency. Now this isn't the appraisal contingency. Not the appraisal contingency we're talking about the loan contingency. Is it okay for you to remove the loan contingency? Because you're trying to make your, well, you shake your head no. Let me tell you why I would say it is okay. It could be dangerous, which I get why you're saying, oh, don't do that. But if you've written 17 offers and they've all been rejected and you're losing to cash, and now you call up the listing agent and say, well, geez, what's going on here? He said, well, I got 17 more cash offers. I'm not going to tell you how much they are, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, well, geez, I know my buyer's ready to go. All Brad needs is a property and an appraisal. I mean, this thing's ready to go. The FICO score is 1,500. Okay. So he's got a huge, everything's beautiful. So if everybody's on the same page, and that really means the buyer understands that they're putting their deposit at risk if they don't get this performed, if Brad stumbles, check the box, no loan contingency. Now that's going to be rare. I've had some buyers and some agents with extreme confidence that have done that, and frankly it's worked out fine. But that's not normal. But in this marketplace, that might be something that's necessary. But you sure as heck don't want to be checking this no loan contingency box unless you are super confident.
You are putting your 7,500 at risk.
Correct? Well, the entire contract puts it at risk, but that would certainly put it at more risk.
But if you want to compete with the cash buyer, that's what you have to do. You have a strong buyer, really want to buy it,
that's right.
Close it, you have to do it.
That very well may be necessary. But the buyer has to understand, and in all honesty, we may want to prepare a separate agreement between the buyer and the lender and the buyer and us that basically say, hey, we are not recommending you do this. You're doing this because of market conditions and you want your offer a little bit. We just want it to be perfectly clear that if things go south, you're putting your money at risk. And we don't want you to beat Brad to death, or you don't want to beat us to death because you wanted to make your offer look a little bit better. This is a buyer's decision. And this is not your average buyer we're talking about. This is the super buyer. This is the super buyer that at the end of the day could say, oh, I could pay cash for it if I had to. And I'll just let Brad refi it after I close. Okay? The super buyer. Alright? Okay, so we've got our loan contingency in effect. Normally we're going to check this box, the loan contingency, and that is best practice. If you're writing the offer for your client being the buyer, that's what you want to do. Appraisal contingency. Now the appraisal contingency and the loan contingency basically go hand in hand. I mean the language is almost the same. And the time frames are almost the same. Appraisal contingency and removal. This agreement is, that is the default, is the default, is not, you have to check the box, is contingent upon the written appraisal of the property by a licensed certified appraiser no less than the specified purchase price. Pretty straightforward, okay? If there is a loan contingency, buyer's removal of the loan contingency shall be deemed removal of the appraisal contingency. If there's a loan contingency in place, buyer's removable of the loan contingency shall be deemed approval of the appraisal contingency. It makes sense. Brad has now issued a formal loan approval. Well, they don't normally issue formal loan approvals without an appraisal. Now, I don't know if this is common practice at PHH or Coldwell Banker Mortgage. Some lenders will issue a formal loan approval, which means nothing.
With condition.
Conditional approval.
Yeah, conditional approval.
Subject to. Okay, and one of those is an appraisal. Okay, but if you have a true, now again, there are all sorts of loan approvals. You'll have a conditional approval subject to docs, and you'll get the list. Your loan is approved with the prior to doc conditions, which basically would mean give us these 3 things, And once you get those, then we'll draw loan documents, okay? Or, and then I'll let Brad fill in the blanks, or, hey, your loan is approved, but you have a prior to funding conditions. Those are not normally ever gonna be an appraisal, okay? But a prior to funding condition normally is something small. You don't wanna go to that extent of getting, loan docs signed, everything, but then you're, oh, geez, we need this very, which by the way, how many escrows or loans have you had fall out that had a minor prior to funding condition that everybody thought would not be a big deal, but for whatever reason, you couldn't satisfy it?
More than I would ever want.
More than you want to talk about, okay? And I would think that in most cases, the reason that those fall out is not the lender's fault. The buyer, for lack of a better description, has fooled us. And one of the things that we all along was like, well, geez, Lance, you told us you have this piece of paper, and all you have to do is give it to us. And we've gone all the way down the process, and we finally get our prior to funding conditions, we funded. No, we haven't funded, excuse me, we can't fund. We're ready to fund. We cannot fund until you just provide us this piece of paper that you have said you have had all along. And now it's like, you don't have it. Well, guess what? You don't have a loan. Because this piece of paper is a heck of a lot more important than you realized, even though we got all the way down this point. So let Brad fill in the blanks here a little bit on our prior to funding, prior to closing, and even the appraisal. One other thing, and then let me have him comment on this. The default on this also is 17 days. You think it's a good idea to talk to, we talked about this a little bit last week, a good idea to talk to your lender, even though they don't have the control that they used to have on their appraisers. But they at least can get a general idea. Geez, the last few we've done, it's taken us more than 3 weeks to get the appraisal back.
Right.
This 17 days isn't enough time. How much time are you going to give us so you need to change it? I need it to be longer. Any comments?
Yeah, there's a couple of them there. So you are right, they're not going to give you a full approval. And the document you're looking for is a commitment to lend. The word commitment to lend means it is underwritten and all the main stuff is in, subject to. You might even get a commitment to lend with the appraisal not being in, saying subject to appraisal being at this price and, passing. You're so right, it works with the appraisal. So the appraisal, what usually holds that up in today's industry is that the customer hasn't given the lender their $500 up front. They're not going to order full formal appraisal and credit without a credit card or check up front. Because the lender doesn't want to be stuck for it if it all goes to hell. They just don't do it. So, for us, and for any of the companies I've worked with, even Wells Fargo for me, and the loan officer kind of controls that, we almost always order the appraisal within 48 hours of the date that the customer does the application. At some point I should define what that means, what an application means.
Yes.
Okay? So the 17 days to get the appraisal back should not be a problem. It has nothing to do with whether the appraisal has issues. That's just because they're all committed. FHA, and VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they're all required to deliver within 10 days.
Okay.
That's part of the new Dodd-Frank laws for appraisals.
Yep. Okay, raise your hand, and we've got a few people in here that have closed a few transactions. Who has had an escrow open where, and maybe you even represented the buyer in this case, and if you did, shame on you. But who has had an escrow open where on day 17, not only is the appraisal not done, the appraisal hasn't even been ordered? Well, I've had plenty of them. Okay, plenty. Now, I will tell you, I have not had any where I was representing the buyer, because I will not let that happen. But I certainly have been on the listing side of the transaction, where we're now, and again, this is another, and I don't want to get into contact management, this is another reason why you need to have some sort of contact management system in place, or even SkySlope. If you were the SkySlope training earlier, there was a little reminder thing on there. I don't know if that's what I would use, but if you don't have anything else, it's as good as any. Plug in a little reminder on whatever it happens to be on, May 16th or April 16th or whatever the date is. Follow up, see if buyer's prepared to remove appraisal contingency.
Well, a smartphone may not have a reminder until you remove it. Every day.
Well, there you go. Well, there it is.
Every day.
Boom, boom, boom. I gotta get it. Do I have it? Do I have it?
Long list every
Do I get
day.
it? Well, let me ask you this. I mean, if you're the listing agent, or let's say you're representing the buyer, I'm the listing agent, and I call you on day 17, or Janet sends you an email and says, hey, you prepared to remove appraisal contingency, or for that matter, loan contingency, or whatever else we have on here, and you inform me that the appraisal has not been ordered,
Oh,
what are the chances of me giving you an extension? Probably zero.
zero.
Not probably zero. Zero. Now, if you told me it's ordered and we need a couple more days, that's still a problem for your buyer. In most cases, agents and sellers will be reasonable and they'll give you. Now, again, you got to be careful. Let's use the scenario we just talked about. You know, Brad and I are just waiting for a reason to cancel the deal because we have a higher cash offer, and that's as good a reason as any. But in most cases, you can get an extra couple, 3 days. But I can count. I'd have to take my shoes and my hands, and I'd need everybody to take their shoes off and fingers raised how many times I, as a listing broker, have been told on day 18, or for that matter, we've got a 30-day escrow. And not only are we not ready to close on day 30, not only do we not have a loan approved on day 30, we don't even have the appraisal ordered on day 30. Now, on that particular case, shame on me just as much as anybody else, because as a listing broker in that case, I'm not doing my seller objective. I didn't follow through. And quite honestly, if on day 17 you tell me you haven't even ordered the appraisal, frankly, probably shame on me as well, because that's something I want to follow. Come on, where are we? Did you got the appraisal order? Okay, yeah, we're- By the way, do people lie?
No, people don't buy.
I gotta tell you, people lie.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, it's been ordered any day. Gonna happen any day. We could go on for hours just about that. Okay, so we've got our appraisal contingency.
Okay.
And now what's another thing that's very common in this marketplace? Basically, in this particular marketplace, a lot of sellers are basically saying, we'll give you a loan contingency, but I'm not going to give you an appraisal contingency.
Mhm.
In other words, we sell it for, what we say, $250?
250.
Appraisal comes in at $245.
Mhm.
Tough. You agree to pay the difference between the value, appraised value, and the contract price. Now again, if you get a counter offer back, before you even talk to the buyer, you immediately turn to your lender and say, Brad, with this particular buyer in this particular loan program, can they do this? Are they allowed to pay the difference between the sales price and the appraisal? If the answer is yes, then you can turn to your buyer and you can say, okay, well, how bad did I? And then you also have to have a different conversation with them. Let's suppose it goes like this. Our contract price is $250. And let's suppose that we kind of feel that $250 might be a little tough. Market's rising, but we really think, frankly, they're probably worth $245. Okay? The buyer said, well, I can handle that. I got enough money, and that's not a big deal. So they agree to pay the difference between the appraised value and the price. And we all kind of sit around the table and we think, appraisal could come in at $250, but we don't want $245. Appraisal comes in at $225. Is that a little different situation for the buyer, maybe? Is there a little difference between coming up with $5,000 as opposed to $25,000?
Oh, yes.
Is that also potentially going to be a problem for Brad on this particular loan with this particular buyer? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Could it be a problem for the buyer?
Yeah.
Yes. Could be a big problem for the buyer. So again, we are on a really thin ice when we start to go. Is that a common counteroffer today? Is it common to hear back? And then it's common. Check this out. By the way, can the buyer on an FHA deal pay the difference between the appraised value and the price?
Yes.
They can. Okay. Gotcha. Fannie Mae's been doing this forever. And I know the answer is yes, because Fannie Mae, they try to stay on the straight and narrow, although one of Fannie Mae's asset managers was arrested a couple of days ago. Whole other conversation.
And you
But-
just put that on video.
Well, it's public record.
It's out on the internet.
At any rate, they try to stay on the straight and narrow, but it's very, very common for Fannie, even on FHA deals, to say the buyer will pay the difference. Now, part of me says, fine, it's free market. you know, or getting a Govy insured loan if that's what they want to do, and if they've got an extra $25,000 in the bank, if that's what they want to do, fine. But the reality is, specifically on FHA buyers, is it traditional for FHA buyers to walk around with a whole lot of extra money in the bank?
No, they have a minimum down payment, so.
Most FHA buyers are not walking around with a lot of money in the bank, and for no other reason, that's why they're buying FHA. If they had a whole lot of money in the bank, they probably would be using some of that money,
Right.
getting a little better rate, a little better loan, getting out of the mortgage insurance, whatever it happens to be. So when you go into these deals where you write an FHA deal, and that, it's like I say, you are on super thin ice. So you don't want to get caught in a situation where you're allowing your buyer to agree to pay the difference between the sales price and the appraisal price, certainly on FHA deals. And you better make sure you have a conversation with them. You better make sure you talk to Brad, and you better make sure that if you think the property's going to appraise for sales price or darn close to it. Darn close to it. If there's any chance that you think that property is going to appraise for significant, I mean more than $5,000 lower than the contract price, you better be careful. You're going to be in trouble. And by the way, I've had it happen. And frankly, I've had some bad FHA appraisals where they've come in. I mean, this property is worth, Camino San Simeon, that's a $230,000 price all day long at $190,000 FHA appraisal. It's a bad appraisal. And guess what? We tried to get the appraiser to go back and reconsider it.
I had one.
Went through the proper channels, and guess what they came back at? 190.
190.
Had we done that on that deal, we would have been in trouble. The buyer didn't have money. Okay, so we've got our appraisal stuff in here. All cash. All cash is all cash. The only thing I can say about all cash, and I know, you know, here we are. What are we? Today is March 28th, 2013. Those of you watching at home, I've been doing these classes for a long time. The market changes, okay? This market is flooded with real cash buyers, an emphasis on the word real. Up until this market, and I'll define this market as the last 6, 8, 10, 12 months, I use the word real cash buyers in quotes because the vast majority of the people that presented themselves to me as a cash buyer were not cash buyers. They did not have cash.
Oh.
Okay? They said they had cash, but they didn't. When it came time to perform and put the money down, they didn't have it. And I gotta say, this is honest to God, true story. You don't see as many of these as you did before, but most of you guys have been around for a while. Who can remember the days coming home, going to the mailbox, opening up, got this letter on the outside, you know, pre-approved something. You open it, maybe from Wells or from B of A, or from, and you open it up and it says, you have been pre-approved for $250,000. All you gotta do is check this box and send in this piece of paper, and we're gonna mail you a check for $250,000. You know how many buyers that I've had come in to my office telling me that they have cash, only for me to find out that the cash that they had all of them was this letter that said they just had to go to. I'm telling you.
Wow.
So the moral of the story with cash is cash buyers need to prove to you that they are real cash buyers.
7 days.
And it's very simple. Well, prior to you writing the offer, a real cash buyer would be more than happy to prove. Cash, people with cash want to buy, they don't have a problem proving to you that they have cash.
Right.
You know, here's my bank statement. Okay. Which, by the way, if they just give you a bank statement on just a traditional deposit account at B of A or Wells, whatever it happens to be, for the most part, you could consider that liquid. I mean, you get it, it's liquid. Better be careful. You know, is it a CD? Is there a maturity date? Is there a penalty? Are you prepared to, you know, break your maturity date and hit the penalty? It's in an annuity, it's in a stock account. How quickly can you get it? 401k. Where's the money coming from? Now, you said cash, and you said you can close in 10 days. And again, a lot of times, buyers with cash, that it's locked up in these other areas, they don't maybe understand it's not as easy to get that cash. They may just think, all I got to do is make a phone call, go to the bank and get it. And again, in their defense, they may not understand that it takes a little bit longer to do that. Anybody ever had a cash buyer? Any of them say, oh yeah, I'm just waiting for my workers' comp. My attorney told me my workers' comp settlement.
I heard that.
It's coming in, man.
I heard
Next
that,
Friday. Next Friday, they promised me a workers' comp settlement.
Call me when you get it.
Amen. I've had dozens of those. I've never ever had one of those. I don't know what it is about workers' comp settlements. They just make craziness. Okay, so there's our cash buyers. Buyers stated financing. Seller has relied. This is important. Let's take a minute on this. Buyer stated fine. What that means is the buyer has said on page 1 they're doing the following type of loan. I'm doing a conventional 20% down loan. Okay? Stated, I mean, look at that.
That's because that scale's highlighted.
Oh, is that what it is? It's blocked on it?
Yep. See, now, yeah, there you go. Now,
I learned something already. Okay. Buyer has stated up here on page 1, up here on page 1, that they're doing 20% conventional, right? Okay, so you're doing a 20% conventional loan. I have told my seller that the buyer has stated, this has nothing to do with stated income,
No.
okay? I've stated I'm doing a 20% conventional loan. Seller has relied on buyer's representation of the type of financing specified, including but not limited to, as applicable, amount buyer's down payment, 20%, contingent or non-contingent upon the loan, or cash if buyer seeks alternative financing. Seller has no obligation to cooperate with buyer's efforts to obtain such finance. Let's just stop right there for a minute. We accepted your offer because you said it was cash. You have now we get a phone call from an appraisal that says, we'd like to set up an appraisal on 123 Main Street. Who are you with? Yeah, I'm doing a loan for PHH. Excuse me? I thought we had, so I called, hey, what's going on? I thought we cash. Oh yeah, I talked to the buyer, they really want to keep the money in the bank, that's what we get a loan. Excuse me? Yeah, they said they want to keep the money, they put the money, we can get a loan.
Usually an out of area
Oh.
lender too, they're
Okay.
hard to reach.
Now, it doesn't have to just be that. Changing from 50%, is there a difference, that's just the feel of it. Is there a difference between a 50% down payment loan and a 40% down payment loan? There's more money in the deal. Between a 40% and a 20%, well, there's more money in the deal. Between a 20 and a 10, between a conventional and FHA, between an FHA and a VA, between what used to be super common, maybe they're coming back, an 80-20, 100%, okay? They're all different. I'm sitting down with my seller advising them, we're going to accept this offer, Matt, because it's cash. And we just found out we've been had. It's not all cash. So, very simple. Don't just willy-nilly change your financing types. Now, I tell you, if you want to willy-nilly change it from FHA to cash, most people won't care. Change it from FHA to 20% conventional, most listing agents and sellers, if you improve the type of financing you're doing, we're going to say fine. If you, for lack of a better description, downgrade it, you're going to have a problem.
What, will there be appraisal issues if you already had an FHA appraisal and then you switch to conventional?
Sure. You have to get a different appraisal.
You have to get a different appraisal?
Yeah, conventionals, they're not going to use the FHA appraisal. And of course, and vice versa. Yeah. So, yeah. So switching that, and which is actually, that's not even, oops, did you have one of those going?
Right now I do, yeah.
Chris's eyes are like, oh,
It's a different designation.
Well, I knew it was a different appraisal. I didn't, yeah, this could be an issue.
Could be an issue. Now, in theory, let's just, what are you trying to use? You're trying to use an FHA on a conventional?
We got accepted on FHA and then now they're switching over to a conventional.
Well, again, you probably won't have a but the appraisal's already been ordered?
Appraisal's already been
Okay, well,
done.
they're gonna have to pay for another appraisal, right? Probably, yeah, pay for another appraisal. The
Why are they
seller-
switching loan programs? Why?
Because the condo complex, the lender figured out halfway
FHA?
through it didn't qualify FHA.
There you go. Well, in that particular
Why didn't it
case,
qualify?
Problem with the HOA.
What?
Why didn't it qualify?
Because it's a condo, that particular, I don't know the
they
exact
lost their
reason.
certification.
Okay, that's the only reason?
Yes.
Just along those lines, and then we can maybe put some more flavor on that. If you sold a condo pretty much anywhere in Southern California, let's just say 4 or 5, 6 years ago, and you sold it to an FHA buyer, and now you're back in that same condominium complex with a history that you just sold it to an FHA buyer, it is not safe to assume that that condo complex is still FHA approved. Most of them have lost their FHA.
85 to 90% are no longer, and they're
Right.
requiring a new recertification.
Yep, exactly.
And how often does that happen? Is that yearly? Is that
Every 12 months now.
yearly? Okay.
Yep. And
A
there's
lot
all
of it has
sorts
to
of
do with the
challenges.
HOAs.
Yeah, delinquent HOAs and then the
That,
percentage of owner
occupancy
occupant.
standards.
Yeah.
And one of them, the master policy on the complex is no longer complete rebuild. There's a lot of things.
Buku problems. You know, you look at locally the condo complexes in our city, whether it's the old ones that have been here for 30 or 40 years, or whether it's the newer ones that were just built 5 or 6 years ago, none of them
Now,
have valid FHA certification.
real quick,
that I'm aware
it's
of.
very possible though that your appraiser is certified for both. So your lender should be able to just contact him and have him do a redraw, and probably only cost $125 for him to move it off of the FHA document to the conventional document,
Mhm.
and no harm, no foul.
And in the scenario that you just laid out, Chris,
Yes.
that particular scenario is a little different than what this is about. Everyone's kind of on board on that. Everyone knew we were going FHA. Everybody kind of caught blindsided. Oh, geez, we've got a condo complex that's not approved. So everybody's kind of saying, okay, great, let's regroup, let's go conventional. And for the most part, and part of my talk on this has to do with, you can make changes in the contract all the time that make sense as long as the buyers and sellers and everybody are agreeable and it's reasonable. That makes sense. It should be agreeable. It should be reasonable. The larger problem is when you're presenting your buyer in a better light
Right.
than what they really are able to do. I say they're cash and they're really hard money. Okay, well that's a difference. Okay, well it might be a fine line on the difference, and maybe their hard money lender is fantastic, and maybe their hard money lender can close it in 10 days, and if that's the case, that's fine. But when you get to day 10 on a 10-day escrow, and your escrow's saying, well, we didn't close because they're trying to get the money from the Norris Group or from the ABC company, and there's a problem, is the seller going to have a little challenge with that? Nobody said you had to get the money from the Norris Group. And by the way, Norris Group's a great company. They're a great hard money lender. And if someone brings me a hard money lender from the Norris Group, I make a phone call, they verify it, I'm good. Okay? But anyway, be very careful. Whatever they state they have to do, and again, buyer's failure to secure alternative financing does not excuse buyer from the obligation. And having said that, if they do change, I think it says, yes it does, so the seller does not have to cooperate with the financing. So in other words, not cooperating could mean cancel. We're done. I'm not going to put up with this garbage. Change financing. Lines. Okay, allocation of cost. Kind of goes hand in hand with our net sheet discussion we were talking about earlier. So we're going to take, what time is it? Oh yeah, we're looking good. We're going to take about another half hour. We're going to go through this, and then we'll take the last 5 minutes of the class and we'll do a little bit of net sheet stuff. Okay? So allocation of cost, if checked, unless otherwise, and again, if checked, it applies. Unless otherwise specified in writing, this paragraph only determines who is to pay for the inspection, the test, the service report mentioned. It does not determine who is to pay for any work or recommendations. Okay? So all this says is who's paying for the inspection or the test or the report. Okay, so here we go. Buyer or seller shall pay for an inspection for wood-destroying pests. That is commonly known as the termite report. Who pays for the report? In Southern California, traditionally the seller provides the report. In this market, that might be different. It's a tight market. I'm the buyer, I'll pay for everything, okay? Just give me a chance to buy. But normally it's the seller. Don't leave this blank. You know, put in something. Terminex, Any Reliable, ABC Company. Do you have a question or you just?
Just so you know, the VA, the buyer can't pay.
Right.
The vet
Okay.
cannot pay for that inspection.
FHA they can. Conventional they certainly can. Cash they certainly can. VA that's one of the exceptions.
I was kind of running into some situations with this before where I actually checked, seller to pay for it.
Okay.
Well, it came back that there was repairs that needed to be done. Now those repairs have to be completed prior to the lender funding the loan.
Okay.
If it's not on the RPA, then the repairs do not have to be done prior to post
Well, I think it's gonna depend a little bit on what type of financing you're doing. Keep in mind, as this just stated up here, all that this, just from the sheer contract
Right,
standpoint.
okay, I'm sorry.
The lender may have different things to say about it depending on the type of financing you're doing. But from a contract standpoint, all this just says is who's gonna provide the report. I want a report from Kirkland Termite Control, okay? Now, if the report comes back, and again, what form do we have to use to determine who's gonna pay for what? That's the WPA form.
allocation.
Who pays for section 1, who pays for 2, section 2, so on and so forth. Now again, and depending upon the loan, the lender may say, well, now you've given me a termite report, and yes, these things have to be done. Or, again, you know, a different type of loan, like, I don't give a crap, you know, get it or not. So let's just, for now, we can bring the financing part in, but for now, let's just say who's asked for it. Now again, little bit sidebar, let's pretend we're listing agents now. Let's pretend we've had this transaction in escrow previously. Let's pretend we had a termite report on the previous escrow. And let's pretend it says X. Okay? You now have a buyer that has come in and asked for a secondary report with a different company. Okay? You might want to deal with that in advance because you do have a duty to disclose, I have a report with the ABC company and this is what it said. Now you can deal with who's paying for what, but let's suppose it's the ABC company, and let's suppose for a minute when the agent and the buyer wrote that they wanted a report from the XYZ company, they really want a report from the XYZ company. Okay? Well, if that's the case, you have to understand you will now have 2 reports, and they may not say the same thing. 2 appraisers, no. 250, 245. 2 termite guys, termites over there, termites over here. Termite cost 1,000, termite cost 1,200. One guy finds fungus, the other guy doesn't. Okay, so and both those reports are in play. And of course the buyer now, of course, wants everything done on both reports for the absolute maximum amount of money.
This is probably getting off on a tangent again with the lender issue. What if the listing agent does provide that and says, here's the WPA, or I'm sorry, here's the report that there is some damage on it.
Yep.
And now we both know that ahead of time and I
Yep.
disclose to the buyer that there is some stuff.
Yep.
Rather than having taken care of this in escrow and do the repairs now, let's leave it off of the RPA because now we know prior to.
Yep.
Is that allowed?
Perfectly fine, as
Okay.
long as it's disclosed and it's understood. Now again, depending upon the type of financing we're doing, if the type of financing is going to require a free and clear termite report.
Well,
Which they normally don't, they usually don't.
Right.
Okay, so here's the key. If you disclose it as a cost, we gotta see it, you can't undo it. So
Okay.
if you put it on a GFE, if it gets on a HUD or disclosed in your lender instructions that it was done, or your lender's package, etc., you can't undo the do.
well, no, I'm not saying to
what
do
you're saying
that.
What I'm
is that they're
saying
going to
is-
deal with it after close of escrow.
Correct. I'm saying let's
As
hide
long
this
as
report.
the appraiser doesn't make any comments and require
Okay,
a termite,
Right.
because anything that's in section 1
Has to be done.
and anything that is considered health and safety for any of them has to be done before docs can be drawn.
Right. Let's give you a good example, totally off the path, but it kind of ties into what Chris is talking about. Let's just suppose for a second, which by the way, the termite guys do this a lot. This bothers me a little bit. This is a wood destroying pest or Oregon, which by the way, just a real quick term. We do a whole class on termite reports. Termite reports are not all about termites, okay? You know, fungus, you know, mold, mildew, dry rot, that sort of stuff. That screws up wood and eats wood just as fast, you know, that's the organism part, the little fungus in there, okay? That destroys stuff just as fast as termites do. Okay, but we send out ABC termite, they look at the property, they do not find any termites, they do not find any fungus or dry rot or any wood destroying organism. Basically the property is clear. But they make a notation. While in the attic, noticed stain on the roof sheathing in the northeast corner of the property. No evidence of fungus or dry rot, I just noted a stain. May want to look for further investigation. What are they basically saying? They're saying the roof's leaking. The termite guy is saying that your roof's leaking. Okay.
Now Brad's gonna make us get a roof.
Right. Now, honestly, I have a little problem with that. Because the reality is if you go in, who is driven by a housing complex, or for that matter, any building construction site, driven by, oh, look at that, they're doing that today. You're driven by, they're doing that today. Oh, look at that, they put the roof sheathing up. They must be getting ready to do a roof thing. And then you drive by the next day and it's raining. And you're like, oh shit, it rained before they got the roof on. Has anybody seen that happen?
Yeah.
I see it happen all the time.
Yes.
Okay? But, and again, it's not an unreasonable observation for somebody to say, I see a stain on the sheathing in the attic. And there's not an unreasonable conclusion to draw there may be a roof leak, current or past. But you have a termite guy that does that, he is now throwing the proverbial wrench into the deal. Because now you're going to want the buyer naturally saying, oh geez, you know. Or again, maybe you've got that, you disclose it and say, hey, just want you to know this is the termite report we've got, reputable company, you know, yada yada yada. They did make this notation, but what an idiot. I mean, look at that roof. I mean, it's obvious that this roof was replaced, you know, 6 months ago. And not only that, which obviously would be even better. Oh, by the way, here's a receipt for the roof that we just did. So, why the termite guy put that on there and didn't mention that we have a brand new roof, I don't know, but they did that. Things like that muck up the waters. But the bottom line is you got to disclose all of that. You've got to disclose. But back for our generic purposes here, who's going to pay for the report and what are you going to do? Do you have multiple reports? If so, you've got to disclose. Pick reputable companies, guys. I can't tell you how important that is, okay? Number 2, buyer or seller should have to pay for or have. By the way, I am not a big fan. I see this all the time. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, what? Seller to pay for have septic or private sewage disposal systems pumped and inspected. Well, it's not on a septic. Why am I checking the box? Why, just in case. Come on, do a little bit of homework, guys. It's not on a septic. If I'm a good listing agent, someone checks that box and it's not on a septic, I want to counter it out, just because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding on the buyer's side that the property might be on a septic. So I'm just saying, hey, item number 4A2 does not apply, property on city sewer, okay? But people do that all the time. Now again, going back to Anna and Debbie just running this project, you haven't closed that deal yet, have you?
Not yet.
Similar problem, or not similar problem, but a problem as it relates to this. The property did have a septic. The contract says, who will pay for the inspection? This does not say, seller shall pay to have septics or private system pumped and inspected and certified to be in working order. It just says, pumped and inspected. Now, if you know anything about septics, which you probably don't, you cannot inspect, when you inspect the septic, you locate it, which sometimes is harder than you might think. So let's just assume they've located it. There's lots of ways they can do that. They dig a hole in the ground. These are big concrete boxes the size of this table approximately. And they've got big concrete lids, 2 feet by 2 feet, big enough for someone to go inside if necessary. And they pull the lid off, walk, they stick a pump in there, and they pump the shit out. Okay? Literally. Okay? So now that has been pumped. Now in the process of inspecting, they're doing, silly things. The lid has got a crack. Well, lid's cracked. We need a new lid. How much is a new lid? Well, it's a concrete lid, $100. Okay, well, that's part of the inspection. The whole septic thing has got a big, now you got a bigger problem. The whole holding tank's got a crack. So they inspect it. Does the system seem to make sense? Okay. Then they go in and they basically turn the water on and they run it. I don't know what the rules and regulations, depending upon the size of the house and the size of the tank, I'm sure there's a spec. But they basically run it, and right after they pump the crap out, they got to wait an hour or so they get their lawn chair out and they pull out the peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
They have lunch, and they watch, and they watch, and they watch, and they watch. And in theory, they let the tank not fill up, but they attempt to fill up the tank with fresh water from the turn on the sink and turn on the bathtub. And this is the deal. If after whatever the period, let's say an hour, if the water's been running and it's not filling up the tank, they have special specs they use. The tank will then certify. Basically, the leach, the systems, if you're not familiar, we'll do another class on it, but the water is leaching out into the backyard and it's absorbing properly. But if they're running the water and it's not absorbing properly, then the tank starts to fill up, and guess what? You cannot certify. Okay, now, this says nothing. By the way, does a buyer want the property pumped and inspected? Not really. What they really want is they want to make sure the damn thing works. It's certified. Pumping it and inspecting it, by the way, how much do you just have under $500?
For the
About 500
inspection was 500.
Give just between $400 and $600. That'll get you this. If everything's fine, then to go with it, you get the bonus. And the bonus is a little certification that says everything's fine, which is really what the buyer wants. Okay? So you have to understand this is only covering the cost to check it out. So you'd better cover, I don't care what side of the fence you're on, if the property has a septic, when I say what side of the fence, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, somewhere, and you can't do it here, there's really not a whole heck of a lot. By the way, this is supposed to say by right septic company or something, isn't it? Okay? Later, somewhere else in this contract, you need to have some language that says, oh, in addition to the seller providing a septic pump and inspection as provided by paragraph 4A2, seller agrees that they will provide a certification that the septic is in proper working order at close of escrow. Now, if I'm the buyer's agent, I may just leave it at that. Certification. Now, if I'm the listing agent, if I get that language from the buyer's agent, I'm gonna talk to my seller. Hey, Matt, they want it pumped, inspected, and certified. It's gonna cost us $500 to get to part A and B. Part C is unknown. How much money are you willing to spend on this?
Not much, Lance.
Okay.
I'm not
How
making
much?
that much on the house.
How much?
$1,000.
Okay. Great. We're gonna counter back. Seller agrees to pay to have property sewage system pumped, inspected, and certified at a cost not to exceed $1,000. At least I protected my seller. He knows this is not going to cost him more than $1,000. Now, do I still potentially have a problem in my transaction? We have an unknown problem. Let's go back for, let's time out here for a minute. When I'm the listing agent and I list a property, one of the very first things, prior to finding a buyer, hey guys, let's get a termite report. What? Yeah, let's get a termite report. How much is it? $50. Do I have to pay for it? Yes. Yes, $50. I'd like to have them out here in the next couple of days. Is that okay? Why do we have to do it now? They might not even ask for it. And you're right. They may not even ask for it. It's going to cost you $50 because most people do ask for it. And again, in this market, it's a little bit different. So maybe in this market we don't do this, but I'm not going to change my procedures. I want you to spend $50. Let's get a termite. Let's find out what we're dealing with. Termite guy comes out and says it's clear. Great. We can now tell the buyer's agent it's clear in advance. We can put it right in the listing. Seller has already completed termite report and it is clear. Cool. Or, geez, it's $2,500. I got to get the thing fumigated. Are you prepared for that, Matt?
No.
Do we have a problem?
Yep.
Would I rather know that problem today, or would I rather know that problem 2.5 weeks in escrow? I want to know it today. Apply that same logic to the septic. We haven't even listed it yet. Matt, when's the last time you had your septic looked at?
Oh, I don't know, 5 years.
Well, most people say never.
Okay. 5 years, that's not
Seven.
bad.
The toilet's flushed, you know.
17.
And again, these are little things that you learn by experience. Matt, this is a big house. I see that you live alone. Where's your wife and your kids and your dog? Well, I don't have any. I don't even see that you have a place to do laundry. I don't do laundry. Okay, so I've got one guy
No
living by
laundry.
himself in a 2,500 square foot house that doesn't do any laundry, which means I got one guy taking a poop, I got one guy taking a shower, I don't have him doing any laundry. Is this important when it comes to a septic system?
Yeah.
As opposed to a house that's that large, it's a 2,500 square foot house, it's made
Yes.
for a family
Yeah.
of 6 or 7 people,
A lot more wear and
which
tear.
means a lot more laundry, a lot more showers, a lot more. Where does all that water go, you guys? It goes in the septic tank. Okay? I've sold that house. And I've sold it to a buyer who then subsequently moved in a normal sized family that takes showers and does laundry. You know how much water it takes to take a shower and do laundry? A lot. Taking the poop part doesn't take a lot of water. It's the showers and the laundry. You know, I'm doing laundry all the time. Well, you're filling up your septic tank. The system it worked good for one guy, it didn't work good for 10 guys. So I want you to order the septic early, and I want to identify how much I'm willing to spend. Now the problem with the termite and the septic, if you've now said I will not spend more than $1,000 to get the termite clearance, and I will not spend more than $1,000 to get the septic done, you know right now you are open to a possible secondary negotiation in the transaction. And based upon what my seller has already told me, that secondary negotiation could torpedo my deal. Now in this market it might not matter because the buyers are so willing to do anything. But in future markets, that probably is going to matter.
Does that same logic apply with the septic thing that we were talking about with the wood destroying pest organisms? If it's not on there, it doesn't need to be done? That's not the same, right?
Again, it depends on what the appraiser puts on.
But most of the time, if you've got
If there's a septic, you need.
let's back up a minute, and let's forget for a second about what the lender says. Okay. I'm not as concerned about a termite. Termites, they're bad news, but you know, termite. In most cases, you get termites taken care of for $1,000, a couple $1,000 if you got it. If you septics are a little bit of a different story. If you're representing the buyer, you don't really want to take that chance. You could easily run into a $10,000 problem on getting a septic redone. Easy. I had a property that I sold down. It was a Fannie Mae years and years ago, down off of Gifford, on East Moreno Valley, and septic won't certify. They had 2 leach fields available on the property. Leach field 1, the house was old. It had been saturated. They new leach field over to the other side of the property. This is when I'm saying it's saturated. There's no other place to leach the septic system. Couldn't finance it. The only way we could finance it is if we're going to abandon the septic, we're going to hook to the sewer, which at the time wasn't readily available and very expensive. We ended up selling it cash at a huge discount. And whoever bought that house, every 4 months or 3 months, whatever, had to go out and pump it. Okay? You know, by the way, if you do find a listing and you turn to somebody, oh yeah, I've got a septic. When's the last time you have it pumped? Oh, I have it pumped every 3 months. Ding, 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 ding. Well, why exactly do you have it pumped every 3 months? Oh, because about every 3 months the bathtub starts to fill up with shit. I'm like, oh, your septic is not working properly. Oh yeah, they told me that. They told me for the last 5 years. I need to get a new tank or a new leach line. But it's just cheaper to get it pumped. You'd be amazed how many people do that. People come out and pump the septic every 3 months. Okay. All right, so we're going to get that done. Same exact story on the well. You have a well, I see. Yes, you do. How much did you guys have a well on your property? Debbie?
Yes. Yes.
How much did it cost to have it looked at?
500. No,
500 bucks.
350. 350.
$350. That's cheap. Did it pass?
Yes.
Okay, it passed. Same, Matt. When's the last time you had your well looked at? Never. It's assuming it's going to cost $350, $500 to get it looked at, reported on, inspected. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. What if it doesn't pass? How much money are you willing to spend?
$1,000.
$1,000. Okay. So again, same exact language on the septic that we put in with the well. If you've never sold a house with the well, I'll give you the 60-second rule. When they go out and they inspect it, what are they looking for, Anna? A couple things they're looking for. The inspector says,
Well, if it's on an electric pump or not.
okay, we're going to inspect the pump. Does the
Yeah.
pump work? Remember there's a pump and it pumps water out and puts it in a tank. Okay, so that's not what I'm looking for. What are they looking for?
Gallons per hour.
Gallons per hour, flow.
Gallons per minute.
Flow. They're going to take a look at the house. They're going to say an average family of, this should support a family of 6 people. And 6 people need so many gallons of water per day, per month. And in order to get so many gallons of water, you have to have so much flow, gallons per hour. And really what that means is, the water's flowing past the wellhead, down there. And they just measure it. There's a little thing and it says, oh yeah, oh dude, you've got great water. Oh my God, you got enough water to power the whole block. You're in great shape. Or, it's been kind of dry the last few years. According to whatever specifications the well people look at, they basically say, hey, you don't have enough flow, enough gallons per hour. Can they fix that? Not really. How would you fix that?
Drill deeper.
Yeah, you drill deeper, or
Put
you
it through a
drill
smaller
in
pipe.
or you drill in, yeah, that'll help.
It's measured up here. It's not measured down
That's
there.
great. I love that. That's the best answer I've heard in a long time. So you either drill deeper or you drill in a different location. Money,
That's gonna cost
money,
a lot
money,
more than
money,
$1,000.
money.
And a wells is 25,000 and up.
There you go. So, now again, if that's the only water source on this property, is that important to the buyer?
Sure.
There is a beautiful property. I almost bought this thing. I wish I would have in hindsight. You're driving out of Maria Valley, you go up, you're going into Ritchie Canyon, okay? Right as you get to the top, just where you're ready to crest over and go to
There's a
Ritchie
house on the
Canyon,
left.
look at the house on the right, depending on which way
Right.
you're going for. The house on the right with the zigzagging house.
Okay.
I almost bought that house. Guess now, I'm assuming this hasn't changed, but when I almost bought this house 20 years ago, guess why I didn't buy it? It has
No.
water. If you notice, there's a huge water tank on that property. Guess how they get their water? They truck it
Fuck
in.
it up there.
And that's not a fun driveway.
Wow.
So they truck their water in. I have no idea what it costs. And it's funny, if you look at that property, if you pay, now you probably couldn't tell because it's probably covered with sagebrush. When I was looking at the property, they had little like stakes with things on them. They had drilled all over the place. They had 7 or 8 drills at God knows how much, how many feet they went in. There was no water. That's a problem to finance. Okay, that's going to be a problem. But again, you want to cover who's going to pay for it. There's one other thing in addition to the flow, how much water there is there's like a bacteria count.
pH level or something.
The clarity, and there's a, I don't know what it is. There's like a little organism. You know, it's you're down, you're in the ground, man. There's fungus and shit that goes in there. Okay, can you fix that? Believe it or not, and
Put a filter in.
well, the first time I ran through that, I was kind of shocked. They'll pour stuff in there. Pour like, and it's not bleach, but they pour some sort of, it
Kill
lowers
the
the enzyme
bacteria.
level. They put it in a filter, it kills the bacteria,
They
whatever.
don't have to
That-
do that anymore though.
Now you can't. Okay.
Now they have to add it, yeah. You can't put
A
anything.
filter in the tank.
It has to be a filter.
Gotta
It's
take
a
care of it
system.
up there. So it comes up with a
I
little
know
organism.
this because my dad had a
Yeah,
well for
it
years
filters
and we had to live with all this crap.
Bottom line, wells and septics are tricky. We don't make enough money in our commission to recover from these type of mistakes. Okay? That's the point on this. In fact, we don't make enough money to cover on most of these mistakes. So termite can wipe your commission out just like that. A septic certainly can wipe your commission out. A well certainly can. Well, that's fine to me, easy ones. Natural hazard disclosure, pretty simple. Normally the seller pays for it. Natural hazard disclosure prepared by property AD or whoever it happens to be. So we're going to get that filled out. And by the way, we never use the CAR form that says the yes or no, severe fire hazard, flood zone, all the rest of it. We do not fill that out for our clients. I don't care if they work at the department that prepares the reports. Your client doesn't fill that out. Okay? Have them spend the $50, get the report, comes with the insurance, it's a legitimate company. And again, the buyer can pay for that. I don't know if there's an FHA rule that says they can't, but in most cases, it's $50. The buyer can pay for that. Okay? Seller will pay for the following inspections. Come up with whatever you want. The roof inspection. Now, this is where you got to be careful. I've had agents that create problems in their own transactions that are completely unnecessary. Well, I know that the roof looks new, but what the heck? Let's just ask for an inspection anyway. Okay? Why am I doing that? Well, the pool looks pretty good, but why don't we have a pool company come out and inspect the pool? Make sure the pool works. Let's inspect everything. Okay, I get it. I get it. I'm protecting my client, and I don't want any surprise. I get it. But guys, let's use some common sense. Okay? And at the same time, if the buyer, on the other hand, wants to pay for all this stuff, that's fine. But if you're asking the seller to provide a roof certification on a roof that looks beautiful, you're probably going to not have your offer accepted. You're certainly going to send up a bunch of red flags. Now, if you're asking for the seller to pay for a roof inspection on a roof that's obviously shady, that makes sense. But be careful what you ask for when it comes to that. And then again, just the traditional home inspection. Traditionally, if the buyer wants a home inspector to come out and inspect the house, a couple $300, they pay for it. Okay? And again, we in our industry have been a little bit bashed, and maybe rightfully so, that we kind of discourage the home inspectors because they create nothing but problems in our industry. If you have that reservation, just get over it. Get the home inspector. Always encourage them to get the home inspector. If the home inspector comes out and lists a bunch of stuff that's nonsense, you need to be a strong agent, talk to your client and say, this is nonsense. It's a $250,000 house. Yeah, I understand that there's a summary sheet. And I understand there's 32 things on there. But welcome to home ownership. by the way, let me introduce you to Lowe's and Mr. Home Depot. Because there's 32 things in there, but if you really go through and you look at those 32 things, you think you and I could go to Lowe's
It's a honeydew
and
list.
spend about maybe $100, and you think we could come back and maybe spend a weekend? You think we could take care of all these things? Yeah, we could. Well, then, why don't you do that, Mr. and Mrs.
But you said we
Because-
were gonna do it.
I did. Why don't you do that? Because asking the seller subsequently to come in and pay, which by the way, a lot of times they will do, but I gotta tell you, when I'm the listing agent and you bring me a list like that, you are sending me a message. And it is not the message you think it is. You may think the message you're sending me is that you're protecting your buyer and I'm a great agent, and I got you. And then you're a great agent, you're gonna get all these things done. The message you're really sending to me is you are weak. And I do not want to go into escrow with you again, because you being weak are potentially going to scare away a buyer on a perfectly legitimate property, and I don't want my income to be dependent upon your stupidity scaring away this buyer over something silly. And you fooled me once going into this deal, and you know what? Because you're weak and because you've given me this list, I'm probably going to go to my seller and say, man, I'm a little upset with this, but I got 32 things of nonsense. And I just know that the guy on the other end of this deal is going to blow this up. Okay, so we're going to go do this. We're going to spend $200 and we're going to get this crap done. And then I'm going to tell that agent again, next time you write me an offer, I'm not going to put up with this bullshit. Okay? I'm not going to put up with this because this is nonsense. The doorknob is loose.
Screwdriver.
I'm not kidding.
Missing screws.
I'm not. The screen in the back's got a little tear, a little fluffy, got the claw on the screen. Are you kidding me? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other things your inspector missed too. Welcome to Home Depot. Welcome to Lowe's. Welcome to home ownership. Now, having said that, there are important things. I mean, there are legitimate stuff. There's a crack in the foundation. There's this. There's that. Electrical pumps. I get all that. It's the little stuff we should not be screwing around with. As long as we're going to just skip ahead a little bit on the walkthrough. Same thing. Forget about the home inspector. I'm now doing a final walkthrough with my buyer, and just look at that. That baseboard has got a scuff on it. Yeah, a scuff. Look at this. Oh, I'm not kidding. I have seen some crap. Little crack in the chicken. The chicken has got a crack in it. Little crack in the kitchen tile. You know, the handle on the bathtub is a little loose. Get rid of that garbage. Don't be negotiating that stuff. You first.
I just want to share, does anybody here know when a home inspection cares to a lender? Would we
Never.
ever care?
Inspection,
Never.
what?
The home inspection done?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Not correct. No, I set you up though, Chris.
When you have it.
When there's a flip property involved, the home inspection is as important, if not more, than the 2 appraisals you have to do.
Do you really put the home inspection on there? Buyer to pay for his own home inspection? You put that on the RPA?
Why not?
I don't know why.
You don't have to. Well, yes, you need to put it somewhere. You can't just send an inspector over to seller's house without the permission.
Well,
So-
I'm not saying that. But
Well, but you might as well put it on here. Buyer to pay for home inspection.
if we put it there, then do we have to get that for your protection, get your home inspection thing, or the waiver that you say
No,
yes,
you can
I'm
put it
going
there.
to?
But keep in mind, on any inspection you're going to do, maybe I'm answering a little bit different. I would recommend that you, if they're not going to get it, then don't have to worry about it. You can have them sign the waiver. If they are going to get it, I would put it here, and that they're going to get a home inspection. Because a lot of times does the home inspection thing have a spot for the seller to sign? Doesn't even have a spot for the seller to sign, does it? It just says this is what you're going to do, what we're going to inspect.
Yeah, you
wanna
are or
put
you're
it
not.
here, because by the way, you cannot order an inspection on a property without the seller's knowledge. One way to acknowledge, get there, I mean, let's take it to this. Let's give you this one. The buyer wants the city to come out. Okay, buyer wants to pay, which by the way, there's no place on here for a city inspection, but the buyer is a code enforcement inspector for the city of Green Valley. He's walked with it and he said, well, I've been doing this a long time. I think there are a couple problems here. And by the way, they've probably already gone down and verified what the problems are. Patio cover in the back's not permitted, right? Okay? But anyway, let's pretend they don't have that much knowledge. But the buyer says, well, I want to get the city of Marine Valley to come out and just make sure everything's up to speed. Looks like they got a new hot water heater, and I wonder if they pulled a permit for it. And boy, that roof looks pretty new. I wonder if they pulled a permit for it. And boy, the patio cover is beautiful, but I think the way they've got that tied into the fascia and the header is just a little bit off. Okay, so they're just thinking through their mind. They want cities now. If you put in here, buyers shall pay for City of Marine Valley to come out and inspect property. And the seller says, okay, then you're fine. You don't put that on there. Now I'm the buyer's agent. 3 days later I call you and say, hey Brad, just want to let you know, city inspector is going to come by tomorrow. I'm going to say, what?
No, they're
The city
not.
inspector is going to come. Yeah, what, excuse me? For what purpose? Oh, but this buyer was just concerned that maybe the patio cover, wasn't permitted and the hot water didn't have permitted. Where did their concerns address the city inspector to come out? Well, they didn't. Well, bullshit. You ain't sending anybody out. Okay, you didn't contractually out. You want to cancel now, that's fine. You can cancel now. But you're not sending a city inspector out to my property. Because you didn't get it agreed to in writing initially from the contract. Okay? Not that we're trying to hide stuff, but what good can come from a city inspector coming out to your property?
Nothing.
Now, if the buyer is that concerned about it, I'll take my house in Riverside. I have a patio cover in the back of my house. On tape, doesn't have a permit. It's nice. Okay? You send the city inspector out. What's the city inspector going to make me do now?
Tear it down.
Going to make me permit it or tear it down or change it to me? Well, it's going to cost a lot of money. And I don't want to do that. And quite honestly, and maybe this isn't the right way to look at it, you want to buy my property. You, I think, really liked my patio cover. Well, do you want the patio cover to be there at close of escrow or not? Now, if you want to be completely incompliant, then fine, after close of escrow, you call the city inspector out there and you can come out and you can have him take a look at it. You can pull a permit on my inspection. And by the way, I'm going to disclose that sale of my house. Patio cover in the back. I don't have a permit. And if the lender has a problem with it, then I'll find another lender that doesn't. Or you can pay cash. Or if the lender has a problem, we will negotiate that. We will sit back and PHA says I have to get it permitted. Okay, Mr. Buyer, are you prepared to pay the cost of that? Or, fine, if they want it torn down, are you okay with that? If you say, yeah, okay, cool, we'll call the city up.
Usually you don't have to. As long as the
By
appraiser doesn't give it a value.
By the way, and I'm not joking about this, if you replace a sprinkler valve for your grass, are you supposed to pull a permit from the city of Marine Valley?
Maria Valley, yeah.
Get a pull a permit for anything.
They're looking for revenue.
Anything.
Any way they can get it.
Really?
Sprinkler valve. Obviously room additions, patio covers, water heater. Water heater. Okay? You replace your own hot water heater because you're handy. Are you getting a City of Marine Valley inspection? Probably not. You call a plumbing contractor. Are they doing it? Probably not, but if they'll probably say, hey, you want a permit? Yeah.
Go get one.
Gonna cost you an extra $250. You cool with that? Not that I'm encouraging us to invade the city, but that's how it
Most
works.
people are gonna say.
So when it comes to getting inspections, if you want it, you write it down. Or you have to, again, notify this out. I'll give you one real life, well, actually, there's other ones are real life examples, but I'll give you one more before we blow through the rest of this. And we will be done here in about 5 minutes. I had a property where I had a home inspector. We had, on the contract, property to buyer to pay for home inspection. Fine, buyer goes out, does a home inspection. Home inspector says, some of you have said this class, there is some mold the size of a thumbprint in the garage next to the hot water heater right as you walk in the road. And that's pretty much exactly what it says. There's a picture, evidence of mold, black mold, in the garage. Picture, size of a thumbprint, to the right of the door next to the hot water heater in the garage. So we sit back and say, okay, well, guess what? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, look at this. There's some mildew, some discoloration in the garage. Squirt, squirt with some bleach, rub, rub, kills. I'm done. Well, guess what? The next inspection the buyer had done, this property was vacant, by the way.
Radon.
Old inspection.
The buyer has a certified mold inspector come out, gives me a written report, and that written report says it's gonna cost $5,000. Look at that, I just Googled it. Look what you couldn't Google this 20 years ago. Certified mold inspectors, 911 restoration. Now, first of all, they had no authorization to send that inspector out. I was pissed. Why was I pissed? Because I now have a report that I now have to share with the next buyer, because I'm going to cancel this buyer, from some certified company that says that I have to spend $5,000 to remediate this mold. Okay, let's just check this out here real quick. Certified mold inspectors. Why are they at the top? Well, they're at the top because they paid. Someone, who are these people certified by? Let's see, who are they certified by? Certified, anybody see it?
Nobody.
Okay, well, I don't know who the hell are certified. Let's do this. Let's do another Google. Who certifies mold? Ah, here we go. Look at that. You gotta love this. Who certifies mold inspectors? Well, let's go. Let's get out of the paid ads. Let's take a look at this. Mold. Oh, hey, we can get training.
Nor am I.
Look at this. We can get training from the National Organization Remediation of Mold Inspectors. Oh, look at that logo.
Norm.
Okay.
That's very noble.
All right. Long story short, there is no government sanctioned certification or license for mold inspectors, period. If we today decided that we were going to become the whatever, come up with a fancy acronym of mold inspectors, we could do it. We could how quickly can we have a website up? Pretty damn quick, okay? And we could charge $200 or whatever we want to charge to, water restoration mediation companies, and we could come in and we could say we're gonna issue a certification for mold inspector. It is bull pucky, okay? There is now. Is that true for termite guys?
Nope.
No.
Who? If you have a problem with a termite report, who do you go to? Go to the Structural Pest Control Board,
Sacramento.
State of California, Sacramento. Most of these other things require some sort of contractor's license. If you have a problem, you go to the Contractor Licensing Board, State of California. Now I get an inspection that says it's going to cost $5,000 to remediate my mold. If I have a problem, who do I go to? I go to, what was the name of that guy? Do I go to Norm?
Normie?
I go to Normie.
So
I say Normie.
California wasn't
Did
even
Norm
one of the
just give
states
you
that
nickname?
had
So do
a-
you
No,
really
what
have
are
to
you gonna
disclose
do?
it? Does the seller really have to disclose it then if they got the thing that said $5,000? Who?
Well, in this world, you better, because everybody's freaked out that they're going to die of mold inhalation. They're gonna die.
Are we gonna say mold though?
Turn into a walker.
Well, it depends on the
who does say
situation.
mold. This is the deal right now. The transfer, which we're going to get to the transfer disclosure statement in another class and another day. Transfer disclosure statement changed a few years ago, and what it changed to is we added one word, QRST. Added one word to the transfer disclosure statement. And who remembers problems with radon? Who remembers problems with, did I pass it? Yeah, tedious. Who remembers problems with radon? Anybody? Asbestos? Anything like that? I'm looking down so I don't see any answer. Okay, well, help me out. I'm almost there.
Search.
I know, I'm just, I need training on how to use the darn.
He likes to do things the hard
I
way.
do. Well, see, I don't do this stuff every day. You guys do this stuff every day. You guys are the pros. I just come out here and pretend like I know what I'm doing. Okay, transfer disclosure statement, top of page 2, right? Are you ready? A drum roll, please. Seller, are you aware of any of the following? Substances, materials, products which may be environmental hazards included but not limited to asbestos. When did asbestos become known as a big problem? 30 years ago? Okay. 30 years ago we were freaking out. We had probably a whole bunch of porn. Actually, we probably didn't have a whole bunch of porn. But we have now relegated the asbestos problem to one word on a form. Okay?
Not aware of it.
Formaldehyde, radon gas. Depending on where you live, has radon gas been a problem? It's not so much here, basements, Midwest. 20 years ago, radon gas was a problem. We have now relegated the problem to 2 words on one form. Lead-based paint. Lead-based paint a problem? Everybody's paints a big problem. We do have a completely separate disclosure. Little kids going over the window, eating the window.
No, we
Well,
all chewed
we've
on
got
it.
to cover, this word did not exist on this form 5 years ago. Okay, it didn't say mold. So we dealt with it. Are you, Matt, are you aware of any mold in the house? Yes. Go down to the bottom of the form, and then you might have to type a letter. And you go down here and say, in my prior escrow, the prior buyer ordered a inspection by ABC Mold Remediation, said I had a problem. Report will be provided upon request. However, I do not intend on remediating this problem. You want to buy my house or not? In this market, are they going to buy your house? Darn straight they're going to buy your house. And you know what they're going to do? Instead of spending $5,000, they're going to get a lot of bleach, they're going to sprinkle on things, wipe it off, and put some pills on it. It's nonsense. Okay, we're going to take a couple questions, and we're going to finish. I'm going to do a real quick thing on the net sheet for those of you guys had some questions on that, and then we'll finish the rest of this form next week. And we will, by the way, we will finish the remaining 6.5 pages next week. Okay. It doesn't take one day to do each page. Yeah.
Just to follow up on what you're saying about the mold remediation, about 3 or 4 months ago, I saw a thing on, I think it was NBC4.
Okay.
It wasn't in this area, but it was more like in LA.
Okay.
And they went out and like did an investigative report, and they
Yep.
had all these mold inspectors coming to people's houses, and they found like 6 out of 10 of them were finding unnecessary stuff.
Total
And
nonsense.
the estimates were all like sky high, like $10,000.
Let me give you my mold story. You ready for it? Let me tell you, this is my background movement. I've got a few of them, but this is the one that set me off, okay? I am not lying. A fingerprint on the wall. They send it $5,000. So I'm like, this is 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago. So wow, this is serious. You know, I'm gonna blow that. I wasn't doing that much. I needed this deal to close, man. Seller needed this deal to close, so I'm investigating, I'm learning. So okay, tell me what you're gonna do for the $5,000. All right, and then after you do it, tell me what we get when you're done. So, well, what we're going to do, we're going to come in and we're going to put on our suits, our bubble suits, which, you know, when you put on a bubble suit, that alone's got to be worth $5,000, right? Those are expensive. And we're going to wash the walls, and we're going to open the windows, and we're going to clean the air ducts.
All that for
Okay.
$5,000? Oh, it was the suit.
So, okay, so you're gonna clean. Anybody ever had their air ducts cleaned before?
Yep.
What's it cost to have your air ducts cleaned? $400 or $500?
Less than that.
Maybe.
Okay, depending on how big the house is.
How big.
Okay. You know, but again, you might want to get that done, not necessarily for mold, but just, you know, that the house hasn't been done, and your filters. Okay, now again, if I want to get my air ducts cleaned, I'm going to get my air ducts cleaned, okay? So we're going to wash the walls, which by the way, this house was vacant, and the windows were all shut, obviously, when the guy did the inspection. I said, okay, so what prompted this $5,000 bid? Other than this thing, well, we went inside the house, and they got a jar. Okay. And then they go outside with the jar. In theory, they take it back to a lab. And they stick a little thing in there. And there is so many parts. It's funny, this is the truth. You have so many parts per million of the airborne mold X spores outside, and super concentrated, so many parts per million on the inside. Right? Okay, so and how do we get those when we open the windows? We ventilate the house.
Really?
So, which by the way, see, I just can't stand myself. I said we're gonna be out here at 5. By the way, if any of you guys have to go, you can leave. I just can't help myself. Shut up, Anna. What's the form I'm looking for? What's the mold form that's in here? It's a residential mold, something or other. We use it on the rentals all the time.
Mold and mildew.
What's it called?
I don't know.
Do you know what the abbreviation is?
Go ask.
No.
Anna, go ask Aubrey what the mold form is. I'll pull it up in a minute. So anyway, so they run the test. So I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. The mold spores inside the house are so many parts per million. The mold spores outside the house are so many parts per million. You're going to wash my air ducts. You're going to wash my walls. You're going to ventilate the windows. Then you're going to come back and you're going to run a test. And in theory, now the mold spores which by the way, it's acceptable to have a higher level of mold spores inside the house than it is outside the house, but we were outside the range.
Mold and ventilation addendum.
The mold and so what's the number? Ask her what the number is. Or is that really what it's called?
Could numeric under maybe MVA, total guess.
So at any rate, so this is the deal. MOLD. I don't say it. I need a name. So this is the bottom. Moral of the story is this. So this is my question to him. I said, okay, so wait a minute. So I'm in my house. I'm on the couch and I'm watching TV. Breathing at a normal rate. I've let my son go outside on the driveway to play basketball. Breathing a hell of a lot heavier than I am. But he's breathing in the exact same mold spores that I'm breathing in that you tell me are harmful on the inside of my house. He seems like he's okay. This is the problem with mold. Anybody have asthma? Kids who have asthma? Know somebody who has asthma. Well, my son has asthma. You know, Drake has asthma. I gotta tell you, that kid has problems during this time of the year. Hay fever, mold spores, you know, he goes motorcycle riding, the dust wipes him out, man. Put him in the hospital, they get the breathing treatments and all the rest of that. Well, he's sensitive to this stuff. The normal person is not. A normal person with healthy respiratory, doesn't have asthma and all the rest of it, you can breathe this stuff and it's not going to kill you. Now, we can show you some pictures in the mold class that you walked in and you're like, okay, this doesn't look good. I don't think I should be in this house.
LRM.
The LRM, okay.
Leaf
So,
rental.
but that's not your average house. That's not an average house with normal ventilation. We came up with the LRM.
Right there. Below.
Lease rental.
Yeah.
There we go.
Relation with the-
So we came up with this. Don't ask me why that we don't have this on a sale. This is only used for tenants. This is what we want you to do. Mold and ventilation agreement. Except as may be noted from time to time, yada, 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 yada. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. We'd like you to do a few things.
Open your window.
We'd like you to keep the premises free of dirt and debris and moisture that can harbor mold. Okay? I'm a landlord. I'm a property manager. You tend to get mold maybe under kitchen sinks and bathrooms. I can tell you, every single time I've ever gone in and had a mold problem, I'm like, I don't have a mold problem, I got a tenant problem. Okay? I teach a class called Whose Mold Is It Anyway? Okay? Is it the owner's mold or is it your mold, Mr. Tenant? Well, you know what? I think it's your mold because you're a pig. Okay? You have not cleaned your house. You take showers. The just grimes everywhere. There's a window above the shower. You know what that's for? That's for ventilation. It talks about you've got to clean that crap out. Okay? And if it is your problem, the only time it's the owner's problem is when there's an unknown plumbing leak that kind of just festers for a while, and then all of a sudden it becomes a problem. It finally comes to the tenant's attention, and then we got a little bit of mildew problem. We're going to come up, we're going to fix it. But almost all of those tenants have known the thing's been leaking for 6 months, never looked at it. I've been looking under the kitchen sink for quite a while. Yeah, I noticed that a while back. But now it kind of smells a little musty in here. When did you notice that? About 5 months ago, I noticed the musty smell. But I thought it was my kids, and I didn't really know because I got dog crap on the carpet anyway. Anyway, mold's not a big deal, guys. But it gets back to this whole inspection, like how we handle this stuff. If you want to make mold a problem in your transaction, believe me, you can make mold a problem. You can make that doorknob a problem in your transaction. Now, not to be misunderstood, mold can be very serious. Again, I just told you, I've got a kid who has asthma. He's very, very sensitive to that. If I'm buying a house and I have those type of concerns and I want to have it checked out, that's fine. But I want to do that at my expense. And I sure as heck don't expect to hand over a bill to an owner for $5,000 to clean some air ducts and wash some walls and open some windows. Okay? So be very careful with that. Okay, we're going to finish the contract next week. If you want to hang around, I'm going to take 5 minutes max because I have to go. And we're going to do this seller's estimated proceeds because I didn't print it out last time. And we'll use this contract. And this is how long this should take. What's it called again? Is it
ESP.
ESP?
You just passed it.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
there it is.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to explain this like we did 2 weeks ago. I'm going to go through it. You guys are my seller. Okay? Let's do it. Okay, so seller is, let's just pretend this has your name. You've got your date. cost associated with, what kind of financing did we do on our deal? Conventional, right?
Conventional.
You're doing a conventional deal. Did we determine when we were gonna close? Let's just pretend it was May 15th. Okay, here we go. We've got, what are the property taxes? We talked about this when we sat on the.
3.35.
No, what's the dollar amount? I got my profile, it says the property taxes are
$1,200.
$2,600, $2,599, okay? Do I have homeowners association dues on your property? No, zero, okay? We talked about this at the listing agreement. You got a 6.5% rate, you never qualified because you had a problem with whatever, and you owe $224,561. Because we don't have a demand, we don't have a formal payoff, but I've got the most recent statement from B of A that says this is what your balance is. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to understand, that is not going to be your payoff amount. Based upon the statement that you've given me, and based upon what appears to be current, and based upon you making future current payments, your payment to B of A should not be any more than that. However, I can't guarantee that. When we open up escrow tomorrow, Summer's going to order a demand. It might take a few days, it might take a week. That demand's going to come in, and then we're going to have this dollar amount figured out, and we're also going to know what this next one is. This next one is, how many days, when are we going to close escrow? We have to pay off this loan. We're going to close on the 15th. I'm going to put 15 days in here. What this is telling me is this is calculated, the computer did it all by itself. It's calculated 15 days of interest, 1, 2, 3, 4, to the middle of May, or whenever our date is. By the way, that would be wrong. Okay, we'll say we're closing April 15th. 15 days of interest, $608, which is a 6.5% interest rate based upon your $240,000 loan amount. Okay? Now, you got to remember, when you make your payments, we talked about this when I took the listing. When you make your house payments, you make your house payments in advance, or do you make them in the rears? You make them in the rears, meaning when you make your April 1 payment, that's coming up here in a couple days, you're not paying for April. You're paying for March that just passed. So you have to remember, I want you to make your April 1st payment. Let me change this date just for my own sanity. Okay, I want you to make your April 15th payment. Well, what if it gets crossed in the mail? And what if they don't get it posted in time? Make your payment. If it gets crossed in the mail, it doesn't get posted in time, they're going to send you a refund. That might take 60 days. I get it. Make your payment. We never tell our clients not to make the payment. Even if in the back of your head you're thinking, I'll make the payment. Okay? And there's some times where I'm thinking, hey, don't make the payment. But I never tell my client not to make the payment because this escrow is going to fall out. They're not going to make the payment. Then they're going to call me. You told me not to make the payment. Now I got a late fee. You pay my late fee? I did tell you not to make the payment, didn't I? Oh, and by the way, now the other thing on my credit because I waited 30 days. How are you going to handle that? Well, how can I unring that bell? I can't unring that bell. Always tell your clients to make the payments. So we're going to have 15. Oh, and by the way, if you don't make that payment, now you got 45 days. You have last month's payment plus 15 days for this month. So if you got a really skinny net over here, just so you know. Oh, which by the way, this is not a closing cost. You got to pay this anyway. Whether you sell your house or not, you owe this money. So don't tell me I calculated your closing costs wrong, because this is not a cost to close. This is a cost for you to live in your house. Okay, as is prorated homeowners association dues. Okay, let's suppose you had another loan. Let's say you had a second trustee. Let's just say you got that 7.5%, and that was just for 10 grand for something small you did. And again, same thing. You got 45 days because you didn't make your last month's payment. You told me you're not going to, by the way. You said, oh, geez, I'm not going to make the April payment. I know you told me to, but I'm not going to. I don't have to pay till April 15th before I get a late fee. And I'm going to talk you out of that, but I can't. So now you got 45 days, which is all of March plus 15 days in April. There's your interest for your first. There's your interest for your second. And now you've got $134,000 in loans. Well, let's assume you don't have a line of credit. You have prepayment penalties on these. Prepayment penalties used to be a big thing in the past. There's so few loans out there with prepayment. I don't even know if they exist anymore. Maybe something, I don't know. But in most cases, you're not going to run into prepayment penalties. Demand and reconveyance. Again, we talked about this in the last class. If you remember, in order to pay off these loans, we need a couple of things. B of A, we're sending you a demand. Tell us how much they owe. They charge for that. 50 bucks, 75 bucks, 100 bucks, 10 bucks, I don't know. We also need a reconveyance. After we pay off your $224,000 loan, we need BFA to sign a reconveyance. They charge for that, 10 bucks, 15 bucks, 100 bucks, okay? Same thing with the second trustee. Now these things may be regulated under Dodd-Frank now, I don't know. But I always put down $100 per loan for each one of these things. So I'm gonna put, and I like to go high. So I'm gonna put 400 bucks. Is that high? Yes, it's high. But I'd rather these be, oh, it's really gonna cost me $4? Probably not. Could cost you 60 bucks. You know, they might be super nice and they might not charge you anything. But that's okay. Because if they don't charge you anything, guess what? More money straight into your pocket. Okay? But I want to give you worst case scenario. Other lender fees. Now when we say lender fees, at least on this net sheet, they're not talking about Brad, they're talking about paying these guys off. Are they going to charge some sort of wire fee or handling fee or some nonsense or a FedEx fee because you needed something and the email wouldn't suffice? Maybe you put something in there, maybe you don't. Throw 100 bucks in there. Okay? Escrow fees. Now you need to know what, oops, take that out. You need to know what your escrow fees are. Our escrow fee, I think I have a base of $250 plus $3 per thousand. I'm not going to do the math on that. Let's just suppose it's, you know, $300. Okay? Now again, if you're doing if you use this form, you need to, oops, let me pull this up so you can see it a little bit better. If you're using this form, you may have a seller who says, well, what's this exchange fee? Unless you're doing a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, you're never going to check that box. If you are doing a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, you are going to check that box and you're going to add probably $1,000 to $1,500 on top of that. Okay? We'll talk about that in the 1031 tax-deferred exchange class that we do later. Okay? So just regular escrow fee. And by the way, that's per side. Seller side, buyer side. So an escrow fee, that's probably a little bit light. Who's got a calculator? Anybody? Someone's got a phone. Take 250 times 3. I am light. I tell you already, I'm light.
750?
Plus 850. 850 plus 300. So 1,150 bucks. So approximately escrow fees on a $250,000 property is going to be 1,150 bucks. Okay? Now, how do I know the formula? Talk to your escrow officer. They're going to tell you what their fees are. Normally, they're going to be approximately the same with $100 bucks. Title insurance. Robert was talking about he's using a thing with lawyers. It's already calculated. Get the book. Go to $250,000. It'll tell you. Let's just suppose it says $1,234. Okay. Notary drawing fees. Sometimes escrow officers charge what I like to refer to as garbage fees. You need to have the grant deed notarized, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Well, that's $10 a signature. And they have to prepare something. That's $250. Okay? Whatever it happens to be. Okay? Well, again, know your escrow company. If you've got an escrow company that's charging garbage fees and crap, we just had this we had this discussion with the Redlands office. Summer charges X amount of bucks for escrow, but that's it. I don't know if she charges 10 bucks for notarizing something, but you've got escrow fee, that's it. There's no garbage fee added on to that. You go to another escrow company, and you may not even realize it because you guys don't pay for this. Your seller ends up paying for it. You'll see the escrow fee, and then in the escrow fee section of the HUD, you'll see like $200 for processing and
Miscellaneous.
or whatever, miscellaneous. Well, it shouldn't be miscellaneous on the HUD. It has to say some pencils. $200 charged to seller for pencils. That's as good as any. They're garbage fees, total crap. So depending on who your escrow officer is, and if you don't have control over it, maybe you want to put in an extra $250. Call it a pad, call it whatever you want. What's the commission going to be? Well, it's going to be 3% to me. Oops. Excuse me, check the wrong box. Struggling. 3% to me.
And this market 3%, 1.5 to them.
Yeah, really. Let's just assume it's that. Now again, I'm not going to have this discussion here, but when you're filling this out on a listing agreement, help me out here. When you're filling this out on a listing agreement, you can't hide this. And not only can you not hide it, you don't want to hide it, but when I'm going through this on a listing agreement, I just put it in and I just move right on. And normally what I say, it's the largest sheet. I know it's the largest number on the net sheet, so let's just move right on. And then I'll go right on. Now, if they're objecting, you need to be prepared to handle whatever objections to defend your commission. Okay? Again, we'll talk about that when we talk about our listing presentation. Because in our listing presentation class, we talk about that. oh, you kid me $50,000. My sister could do it. We don't even need you for it. Truly, it's good enough. What the hell am I even doing here? Why did you call me to come out here? Okay, but you need to be prepared to defend your feet. But also, now when you're filling this out, this is where we scuttle our own deals sometimes, because we're not going to have, we already have a problem. Look at
Yeah,
this.
already
Okay,
negative.
we've got a bad net already, but let's just pretend we got a little bit of money there when this is over. Maybe I need to reduce my loan amount a little bit, okay? But now we're talking about a roof cert, or we're talking about a septic cert, or we're talking about a well cert. Well, that looks like an awful lot of money. You can help with that, can't you? You guys got to be prepared. Okay, county transfer tax, $1,000, excuse me, $2, excuse me, $1.10 per thousand. County of Riverside. So you punch in your $1.10. And again, you got to know where you're at. Okay? If you're in a different county and they charge more, it's not going to be $1.10. Could be $2.10. Could be $4.10. Okay? And they take it per thousand, so it takes the $250,000 sales price, chops off the 3 zeros, 250 times 1.1 is $2.75. That's how that comes up with that. Is there a city transfer tax? Well, right, we're in the city of Marina Valley today. The city of Marina Valley does not have a transfer tax. Other cities do. Los Angeles, last I was told, was $4.40 for a Los Angeles city transfer tax. Okay, well, and if it costs us an extra $1,000 if we're in LA. Property taxes. Again, you got to figure out when did they pay, when are they due, and you've got to calculate, have they made their payment, haven't they made their payment. What taxes are due again? April 10th?
April 10.
April 10th. They pay from June or whatever. You calculate the days, you put the number of days in there. I don't know what it is. Let's say 75 days. It takes 75 days, calculates it based on the number here, and it plugs it in there. If you have a prelim in front of you, and the prelim specifically says they have not paid, it'll give you the delinquent amount. If it gives you the delinquent amount, you just plug in the dollar amount. It says they haven't paid their tax in the last 3 years, they owe $4 grand. Well, put in $4,000. Put in whatever they have. HOA dues. HOA dues actually, unlike mortgages, HOA dues you normally do pay in advance. So you could have a credit, but you need to calculate that. In this case, you'd have 15 days, assuming they didn't pay it. And
We had zero on
we
it.
put zero, so it doesn't matter. Buyer's closing costs. We talked about this on page 1 of the net sheet. The seller has agreed to pay X amount of, that's why I like a fixed fee. I don't like 3% of the purchase price. I don't like 3% of lender fees.
The banks don't either, huh? They're always switching it up. They don't like the
They like-
percentage either.
They like a
They
number.
like a number, yeah.
Give me a number, okay? And it's in the buyer's best interest as well. Because if it says, we're gonna pay $5,500, or actually I think of the scenario we used earlier, $7,500 for buyer's closing costs, we're in trouble over here, okay? So that could be loan fees, it could be the buyer's escrow, it could be buyer's title, maybe they're gonna pay for some of the termite, okay? You can figure all that stuff out. Maybe they're gonna pay for their own warranty. So we've just basically said we're gonna give them $7,500, whatever we want. Who's paying for the NHG? That's supposed to sell it, and we're gonna get. We want the cheap one because we're paying for it, $49. I don't normally do that. I normally put the expensive one in there, which it used to be property ID was the most expensive. It's $100. I think theirs is even more expensive now. I think property ID is. Well, figure out who it's going to be. Wood destroying pest. You get your termite inspection for $50. How much is the work going to cost? Now again,
That's $75 now.
for
The wine inspection.
Wooden pest control.
well, that depends on who you're using. Okay, your guy's $75. Fair enough. Okay, but again, this is why it's nice to know. I did a home inspection, or excuse me, I took the listing with Anna. We insisted, and when I say, by the way, I don't mean to come across strong. There's a way to professionally sit down with your client and say, Robert, I've been doing this a long time. Let me tell you some stories. Okay, I'm good at it. We need to order a termite inspection. I know it's going to cost you $75. I trust my guy. We're going to know where you know exactly where you stand. Can I get your agreement to do that? I'm telling you, presented properly, 99.9% of the time they're going to say yes. And if you fight me on that, I may pick up my crap and say, you know what, buddy, I think I'm in the wrong house. You're having a problem paying for a termite inspection today? You want to spend $75? It's a $250,000 house. I don't think we can do business together. So anyway, now hopefully we've already got our report. We know exactly what we're looking at. So when we get our offer, and guess what? We got lucky. It's only $295 to get it fixed. In our offer, I don't think we haven't gotten to this yet. Let's pretend our buyer wants a home warranty, not to exceed $350. So we've agreed to pay for that. rents and deposits. Let's pretend our house is a rental. I made this mistake. I own a property management company. I've sold my own rentals in the property management company for years. I've made this mistake bunches of times. I'm selling a rental to Chris, who is the buyer. At close of it, which is the rental is occupied. There is a deposit of $2,000 on interest. We close escrow, and in the contract, which we're going to get to next week, it says the deposit currently being held on behalf of the tenant is to be transferred in escrow to Chris,
To the buyer?
to the buyer.
Really?
Yeah. How else are you going to get it? And prorated rents. So in this particular case, let's use my example. There's a $2,000 deposit. Let's just say the rent is $1,000. So I got a $2,000 security deposit. I got a $1,000 a month rental. I got to transfer all the $2,000 over to the buyer, and the buyer paid their rent for 15 days to the owner. So there's another 15 days that needs to go to Chris. So I need to get $2,500 over to the buyer at close of escrow. Now again, it's not really a closing cost for the seller, but it will show up on the seller's HUD. The seller has got to get that $2,500 over. Now if I don't do that, I guarantee you what happens, and I've had this happen to me before. After close of escrow, the buyer gets excited, and I just bought my first rental property, and I got my copy of my rental agreement, and then they're like, oh shit, I just realized I don't have a buyer's deposit, and I own the house now, and they paid the whole month's rent over to the seller. I don't have the rent. How am I going to get that? Okay. Who's the first person they call to get it?
Agent.
They call their agent. You're like, oh crap.
And
We did put that in, oh crap, we forgot to put, oh. And you know why we forget? Because most of us who are selling properties are not normally selling tenant occupied properties in place where you do these type of checks. That's not what we normally do. So when we get out of our comfort zone, we get out of our normal, we do, I told this story the other day, I think Anna was there, so, and if you guys have to leave, go ahead and leave. Pavlov's dog story. Everyone knows Pavlov's dog?
Yes.
The Russian psychiatrist or psychiatrist who learned conditional habiting with dogs. Agents, we are exactly the same way as Pavlov's dog. And this is why I can tell you this is true. On Monday, I drive that big Ford truck. Anybody here drive a Ford? Okay, well I drive a, yeah.
I have a Ford
This is a
Chrysler.
Chevy guy. I drive a Ford. Well, I didn't even realize this, but I've got to column shift. My parking brake is my left foot, and to release my parking brake, I got to pull my thing with my left hand. So I've been driving a Ford truck for years. So when I get in the car, what do? I put it in gear, and to release the parking brake, I pull the thing. So Monday, I'm driving Drew's truck. Drew drives a Toyota, which is a Chevy, guys. It's even worse than a Ford. Okay. Okay. Well, on a Toyota, the parking brake is also on the left. You push it with your left foot. But when you release the parking brake on a Toyota, you push it with your foot down a little bit and it pops back up. So I'm driving Drew's truck, which I don't normally drive. I jump in the car, I grab the thing, I hit reverse, I grab to pull the brake release, and what happens?
Pop the hood.
Hood pops open. Okay, so I get out of the car. The true story.
Oh,
I plunk the hood back down, I get back in the car, I grab the thing again, and I pull it again. No more than 3 Pavlov's dog. Okay? I have been trained and conditioned that that's what I do. And another thing I learned, and as I'm thinking, wow, this is crazy. I didn't even realize this. I always grab the thing first, and then I pull. I realize I don't pull first and grab. I learn, and that's the whole thing. The conditioning thing with Pav, you whistle, the whistle goes off, the rat comes, and you give him the cheese. Okay, well, you got to whistle first to get the cheese. Well, for me, the whistle is grabbing this. That's my whistle. So it's the same exact. By the way, you can apply that to your real estate careers. You've been doing the same thing in your real estate career, you're screwed.
Better adapt.
You better adapt, and you better adapt quick. So with this particular deal, you're not used to this, so you don't do it. You're not used to getting this damn stuff transferred, so you don't do it. And guess who gets to pay for that?
You.
You do. And that's a third of your commission. Because what happens when you call your really nice seller?
They're not
Oh,
nice
Brad,
anymore.
guess what we forgot to do? You need to send me $2,500.
Yeah.
that security deposit and that rent you got. And Brad's like, yeah, I do. You're the one who made all the money on this deal, look at me. I said, you crap. I didn't mean to tell you we're overpaid from the very beginning. Okay, so what else we got? I don't like this one, I don't use this one. Lenders, VA FHA discount point, it's up here. That's my $7,500. HOA, no?
You better put something in there.
Oh, we can put a zero in there if you like.
No,
It
no,
won't,
mean
it
on.
won't take a zero, oh,
Sure.
it'll take a zero.
Okay.
No, no.
What?
Huh?
Oh,
What?
you okay?
Put some money in
I
there.
did. Well, no, I got it up here.
Why?
I'm not gonna. Well. No, I'm with. I know what you're saying. Let's cover it. But in this particular case, no. I don't want any misunderstanding with my story. You are not paying any
Discount
FHA loan. Now there may be something that says a discount point, and I'm going to turn to you and say it's up here.
You guys gotta know what that word means.
Educators.
Discount point means you're buying the rate down.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with standard closing costs. If you put it there, it means that that money must and can only be applied to buying the rate down.
Right.
That is what a discount point is. And it has been reinforced since Dodd-Frank.
Yeah.
It is absolute mandatory.
Keep in mind, Brad will never see this. This is between you, God, and the seller. But he's absolutely right. This is why I like this. Put it up there.
And it can be up there and you can do all the above.
There you
And
go.
earlier when you guys were talking about fees and why you shouldn't put a percentage. So if you are off,
Okay.
we can take and apply it to discount if we have $3,000 left over and you don't want it to go back to the seller.
There you go.
As a lender, I can take my money and I can put it anywhere I want to.
Yep.
Or I can make the title or escrow lender paid.
Time out a little bit. Did everybody understand what he just said?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to explain that again. If let's suppose, let me set it up and you're gonna knock it out of the park. The seller has agreed to pay $7,500. The reality is the buyer really only needs $4,000. Okay? It's a skinny, cheap loan. But now the buyer and Brad and the agent sit down and say, you got $3,500 out on the table. The seller's already agreed to pay it. What can you do for us? And Brad's going to say, this is what I can do for you.
First thing we'll look at is buying your interest rate down.
Right. Save me
So
some
the
money.
standard rate's 3.5 today, but for 1 point, which is $2,000, I can take you down to 3%. And now you're going to pay a 3% rate for life.
Right.
Okay? And so now I still got $1,500 left. So we'll make the title insurance a lender paid. Lender paid. And it now goes to a cost.
So, in other words, the buyer also gets to utilize everything that they've asked for, and they don't leave it on the table, okay? And they get it to their benefit. And it may not truly be a cost, in this case it's a buy down, instead of paying, 3.75, now he gets, 3.578 or whatever.
But it's
the
still
hell
considered a buyer cost.
buyer cost.
On
And
a
the buyer,
HUD or GFE or anything else.
and they get the benefit of that. Your buyer gets the benefit of that. Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
And
it's
you
okay.
guys may have talked about this before when you first started this class.
Yep.
A question for more Brad. How beneficial do you think this is compared to a HUD or a GFE that I could go to Summer and say, can give me a seller's net? What do you think the comparison?
GFE you'll never be able to explain to your buyer. The current GFE
Because
is
there's
ridiculous.
just so much stuff on it.
Much easier.
we talked about this, and
I think I missed that first class, that's why.
Well,
And the GFE is really, sorry,
No,
the GFE
go
is
ahead.
really a lender document.
Right.
By the way,
you really
GFE,
don't
guys,
want to get into that.
good faith estimate, okay?
Okay. You really don't
Provided
want
by
to get
this
into
guy.
that. Let me take that heat because you're going to open up that proverbial Pandora's box or can
Well,
of
that's what I
worms.
feel like we're doing with this. Is
Um,
opening up a whole can of worms of all kinds of
You
questions
may
that
be,
the seller's
but
going to
you gotta
ask you,
remember,
and why not?
normally, this is seller. Okay, GFEs go to
Buyer.
buyers. The faith estimate's on the buyer side.
This
Yeah.
is seller
This is
side.
the seller side. So
Is the
this
HUD
is
the same thing?
there's huh?
Is the HUD
No.
the same thing?
Well,
That's
the
for
HUD
seller.
could be the HUD could kind of be both, but you don't want to go to Summer to get your buyer's cost to close. The only thing
I'm
you would
thinking
want to
seller.
get. Okay, well, wait a minute. I'm representing the buyer. Representing the buyer today. I open up escrow. Now, before I even open escrow, I should have a good faith estimate, hopefully, because we've already got a loan out. Brad's giving it everything. The only question Brad may have is, what are the escrow fees gonna be and what are the title fees gonna be? But he's probably gonna get you pretty damn close. And if he's off, then you're gonna get to Summer, and Summer's gonna say, oh no, actually Brad's a little heavy. You know, we don't charge quite that much, and escrow and the title's a little heavy. So Brad's good faith estimate is probably gonna be a little heavy. Now,
Right.
he could talk to Summer, make sure it's to the gnat's ass, and now we're good. So if you go, and frankly, the reverse is true. If you are representing a buyer and you go to Summer and say, give me a estimated HUD on the buyer's side, she is immediately gonna turn to Brad and say, what are you guys charging? 'Cause she doesn't know any of that stuff.
I'm referring to the seller. This is a
Now
seller's.
we're on the seller side. Okay, let me tell you what I think you should do. First of all, whether you want to use Summer to do this or not, everybody in this room needs to know how to do this. Whether you actually do it or not is a whole other story. Because you may not have the luxury of Summer. You're on a listing appointment, I am the seller, it's 7 o'clock at night, and you just think, because that's the way you've done business, that that's what you're gonna do. And before I say, Chris, dude, I love you, man, I'm ready to go right now. Can you give me a net sheet? I've sold a few houses, I'm pretty familiar with how this works, what are my costs gonna be? Well, now you can do what many agents do. Well, we're gonna sell the house for about $250,000, let's take about 8%, my commission's escrow, that should about cover it. I'm like, no, I got that, I could do that. In the past, I'm accustomed to having someone give me a seller's net sheet, and I want to know, okay? Now, that may be very few and very far between, but this is the deal. You need to know that. If they start talking about prorated taxes and prorated insurance and demand fees, at a minimum, you might say, wow, technology being what it is, it's been a while since I've done these by hand, but I'll tell you what, let me dust off my piece of paper and let's go through it, Mr. Even if you're doing it on a blank sheet of paper, you should, okay, let me. Okay, I'm not cheating, okay. Let's figure out a net sheet. What are we gonna do? I got about $250,000 sales price. What do we need to pay off? We need to pay off some loans. We got a first trustee, we got a second trustee. What else do you owe? Okay, you owe Uncle Bill. Okay, these are the 3 or 4 people we owe. Are you current on your payments? Yes. Are you sure? Well, I haven't paid April. Are you going to pay? Okay, so you're going to have to pay last month's. What's your mortgage payment? Mortgage payment's $1,000. Okay, so let's say you haven't paid last month and we got 15 days in escrow, so you're going to have to pay about a month and a half worth of mortgage payment. So that's going to put $1,500 to pay off your interest for your loan number 1, plus your payoff amount of $220,000. What's your second one? Do the exact same thing. Do you have homeowners association dues? Have you paid them? No. How much are they? They're $250 a month. You haven't paid them? Huh?
How long haven't you paid?
Right. What do you? Okay. Well, so let's get that number. Okay, great. What else have we got to deal with? Okay, well, let's go through the list and what we got to do. We got some escrow fees. Escrow fees are $300 base. I use Summer, and Summer charges $3 for every $1,000. 250 times $3, that's $750 plus $300. Okay, now we're at 11. So I got my escrow fee.
But it's not on the purchase price, it's on the loan amount,
It's no, on the purchase price. Escrow fees are on purchase price.
isn't it?
Okay, correct. Now I got my title thing. Now I don't know what the title is. Back in the old days, I carried a briefcase. My briefcase said, I carried a rate sheet. Stewart title, pull it out. $250, $700. Now I got my rate sheet, or I got my title insurance. Okay, what else? We got commissions. Now I used to love to doing these by hand. And I sit down and I go 6% of that.
Because you can impress people with it.
Yeah, you know what you're talking about.
Right. Okay.
You're a young man. You probably heard me say this before. How old are you?
28.
Okay, I got into the business. I was 19 years old. Sorry to tell myself, I look like I was 16. My wedding picture over there. I was 20 years old. I look like a kid. Okay, I'm sitting down in front of a seller. I had no credibility. Okay, I needed to convince them that I knew what I was doing. One of the ways I did that is I could do this on the back of a napkin. And we went through it, and they'd say, well, geez, you look like a baby, but you seem to know what the hell you're talking about. This is one reason, not to turn this into a commercial for Brad, but let me take 30 seconds and turn this into a commercial for Brad. Whether you guys think Brad is a good loan officer or not, or whether he's, let me rephrase that, whether you think he's a good salesperson or not, because right now, nobody knows whether Brad's a good loan officer. They only know, they're judging him on his sales ability. Has he been able to convince you to give him a loan? Is his demeanor and his approach and all the rest of that worth you giving him the time of day? Okay, you won't know whether he's a good loan officer until you give him an opportunity to prove that. And then you start asking him questions, and he says whatever he says, and then you make an assessment. And your assessment is the guy either knows what the hell he's talking about, or he's an empty suit, okay? If you think he knows what he's talking about, you will then give him an opportunity to move forward. If you don't, you will move on and you'll say, well, the guy, not only can he not sell worth the shit, he doesn't know anything about the business and I'm never going to use him again. Take that, which by the way, Brad knows what the hell he's talking about. All right, so let's go back to my situation. I want to be able to convince my seller that I know what I'm talking about. You guys need to do the same. You need to differentiate yourself from possibly the 3 or 4 other appointments out there. And this is what you are hoping is going to happen. You're hoping that they have interviewed 1 or 2 other agents before they've gotten to you. And you're hoping that they have asked a question to those 1 or 2 other agents and they've gotten a less than convincing answer. Okay, because in this world, there's so much information. Look, we just Googled and found all sorts of stuff on mold certifications. I mean, sellers are smart. Honest to God, I hate to say this, most of the sellers that you're going to run into know more about what's going on than most of the guys in this room right now on certain topics. Okay, the problem is that one topic that they know about, they will test you on. And if you don't know that, you may know everything else about the transaction, but if you blow that one, you're screwed. You're done. So they're going to ask you that question: transfer taxes. And by the way, I sit down, where were we? Escrows, we did commissions, I blow by the commissions. Okay, we're in the city of Marina Valley. The city of Marina Valley is in the county of Riverside. County of Riverside has $1.10 per 1,000 transfer tax. Let's see, $250, no transfer tax. Oh, what is that? I sat down with 2 others, nobody said anything about transfer tax. Maybe it's a hot button for them. Oh, transfer tax, yeah, the county of Riverside, they get $1.10.
There's been some changes in the last year or so, so what I'd like to do is go back to the office and get the correct information, so I'm not giving you an estimate, I can give you the actual answer.
You mean to get the HUD?
Yes.
That's fine.
For whatever the answer, that.
Okay, well that might work. That might work. But
I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. I see what you're saying.
I'm
You
with
do
you,
need
but
to know
you
stuff.
but you may do both. You see, this is where I have no problem at all with you saying exactly what you just said in conjunction with this. Let me give you my HUD. It'll take me 5-10 minutes to figure it out. I'm going to go through my costs. I'm going to calculate it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it to you and say, oh, by the way, I tell you what. Summer in our escrow department, she's fantastic. We have this thing called the HUD one. I won't bore you with the acronym. She's going to take all this. She's going to plug it. She's going to get you a precise number on escrow, on title. And actually, if you give us a couple of days, she can actually order a demand and a payoff for you to be available before we even got the thing sold. Okay? If you allow her to do this, she can order a demand from Bank of America now. That way, when we open escrow a week from now or a month from now, we already have that information. Then she can go back and she can get you the most accurate closing statement, subject to the information provided, that you're ever going to see. Now, in general, what Summer's going to give you should say you're going to get a little bit more money than what I've said, because I've padded some of my cost here a little bit too. But again, you guys need to know how to do this. If for no other reason, let's suppose you're going through the offer, which I just shut down the screen. If you go through the offer and you explain it to them, they're going to have some questions. There's all sorts of places on the offer. They're going to prorate. When you get to the part of the offer, it says prorated taxes. Do you know how to effectively explain proration of taxes and rents and insurance and mortgage payments? Well, if you know how to fill out a net sheet, you do. Yeah. Okay. So I think you need to be able to do both. Whether this is part of your listing period, and this may be old school. This may be one of those things that in today's world we don't do that. We do what Chris does, and that's fine. And I got to tell you, if I can get through a listing appointment, and if I can get away with, oh, by the way, your approximate seller proceeds are going to be this minus 8%, and you're going to walk away with about $10,000. Are you happy with that? I mean, you guys know I'm pretty busy. And if I can get away with that, I'm probably going to do that. So I'll get you the exact number tomorrow. I'll have someone give you the thing. But if I got an extra 5 minutes, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna go through it. Especially if I'm. By the way, if I'm not getting through to you. All right, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to wear your ass down, and I'm going to pull out this net sheet, and I'm going to show you what the hell I'm doing.
Wow.
And then, oh, and by the way, it's also a great closing tool. If you don't have the listing done, and they're like, "Oh, I'll come back tomorrow." Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do this road. Let's go through the net sheet. I said, I'll tell you what. I know you're not ready to list, but let me just leave this with you. I like to leave it with you, but if you did, why don't you just initial it? You say, if you sign this, then you're going to. Try your first little test close.
Yep.
Try that first little, just right there. Just make sure it there. Okay, try that little test close. No, seriously. Oh, just right there. Take this.
No way.
We'll take it.
Yeah, this is the long,
No, seriously.
awkward silence.
No, just right there.
But you can't laugh.
Come on, take it.
No, right here, right here. Your wife can do it. Mrs.? You've been in too many of my classes. The reality is, and you guys know this, if by the way, there's a time and a place for that. Too early for that, it ain't gonna happen. If you've been on an appointment for 3 hours, and you just tell somebody, let me just get your initial here and I'll leave, they're probably gonna take the damn pen to get, but my first listing pricing was 3 hours. I have no idea what I said, those people were so happy to see me leave. Okay? But the next sheet could be a closing tool.
They like me.
Could be a closing tool. You know,
Approximate.
I'm gonna pin a star on you, because you know, you're the first person. Just right here. I tell you, I'm gonna reduce my commission from 6 to 6.5. Alright?
Who here also?
Let's go initial there. Alright. Okay, guys,
Thank you very much.
good to go? Oh, you know what, I just closed my thing without printing that net sheet, so, which is, I think,
Did
the
you
whole reason I
save
did
it?
that. Why don't I do that?
Yeah, I think-
As long as it's still open, you're okay.
Should be open, please save
Okay,
it.
class dismissed.
Right.
If you
Yeah, if you guys have any
want
more
this,
questions
I will
about
print
stuff for
it.
me, come see.
5, 10 copies.
5 or 10?
10.
5 or 10?
Hand delivered to
Ah, there it
us.
is. Oh, which by the way, we have a
God
negative
forbid
net
to
sheet
be
for our
able-
employees, so